That day, out of nowhere, magical portals suddenly appeared in the sky, gateways that led straight into dungeons. Behind each portal was an entirely different world, teeming with terrifying monsters of all shapes and sizes. And just like that, the creatures began pouring out in waves. The only ones capable of stopping them were people who had awakened magical powers. These awakened fighters banded together and used their unique abilities to battle and push back against the illegal invasion of monsters. In the midst of this brutal conflict between swarms of flying beasts and close combat monstrosities stood a team of heroes, shoulder to shoulder in battle: Ingolf von Dietz, Claudia Borjo, Nathaniel Kaval, Iwako Hideki, and a mysterious girl with a cold expression and a lightning spear whose name was still unknown. Each of them possessed distinct powers. Kaval controlled fire, while Hideki wielded wind to strike down aerial enemies. That unnamed girl stood out, striking fear into the monsters with every thunder-infused attack. As the fierce battle raged on, the five of them held the front line together. Suddenly, a monster broke through their formation and lunged toward a powerless civilian. The man fell to the ground, screaming in terror. "Somebody please." Dietz glanced over at Borjo and shouted, "Hey, help him. Go save the civilians." But she lazily propped her head on her hand, unmoved, and muttered, "There's just too many of them." While they hesitated, the green-skinned monster raised its claws, aiming for the trembling man kneeling on the ground, who had his arms over his head, shaking uncontrollably. Just when it seemed like the creature would crush the man, a foot suddenly came flying out of nowhere and smashed into the monster's face, crushing one whole side of its skull. The impact sent the creature hurtling backward into a wall with a thunderous boom, triggering a shockwave. A tall man in a suit and a long cloak stepped forward. Tilting his head slightly, he looked down at the man on the ground and offered a gentle smile. "You okay?" With absolute confidence, he turned to his teammates and said, "I've got this." That man was Misato Koichiro. With a sudden whoosh, Koichiro launched himself off the ground. He channeled power into his right hand, aiming directly at the dense swarm of monsters below. A sharp glint flickered in Koichiro's eyes. In a single sweeping motion, he unleashed a relentless combo attack, striking at every weak point with pinpoint accuracy, annihilating the entire group of monsters in front of him with a single blow. His teammate Hideki, stunned by the sight, muttered, "Damn, he's insane. He's taking on all those monsters by himself." Behind them, Kaval stood silently, observing without a word. The girl in the red skinite suit wasn't surprised. She glanced toward the portal and said flatly, "With time-based magic, he can see the future. He already knows what the monsters are going to do next." As Koichiro charged forward toward a dragon-like creature capable of breathing fire, a confident smile still playing on his lips, the team came to the same chilling realization: he's no longer human. The battle came to a brief halt. All the monsters that had come through the portals had been wiped out. Their corpses lay scattered across the ruined city. At the front lines, standing before a massive snake-like beast guarding the portal, was Koichiro. His teammates gathered behind him. He glanced over his shoulder and said firmly, "All right. Let's finish this." With a swift swing of his arm, he decapitated the final monster in a single blow. "That should be the last one," Koichiro said, brimming with confidence. With this power, he believed, he could finally protect the peace everyone longed for. He stepped up to the portal, the entrance to the dungeon, and placed his hand against its surface. "Now then, I'll seal this gate." But before he could finish his sentence, a sudden force slammed into him, hurling him straight through the portal. His eyes widened in shock. He hit the ground hard, catching himself with one hand as he skidded across the floor. When he looked up, the portal had already been sealed behind him. On the other side were his teammates, the very people he trusted the most. Koichiro's brows furrowed in confusion. What the hell is this?" There was disbelief in his eyes. "I've never seen a future like this before." He moved closer to the sealed exit, staring at the faces of his comrades through the barrier. You planned this together? Why would you do this?" Kaval was the first to answer, grinning with twisted delight. "Why, you ask?" At that moment, none of them bothered hiding their greed and cruelty anymore. Standing at the center of the five, hands casually in his pockets, Kaval sneered. "Because you didn't see it coming. That's why it worked." Koichiro tried to keep his composure. "What are you saying?" The woman in the tight red suit scoffed, throwing him a condescending look. "You're a level 100 monster. You can manipulate time magic." Borjo smirked. "We just want to make easy money without taking risks." Dietz clenched his teeth, his tone bitter. "And yet you insisted on helping people." Hideki jabbed a finger at him, filled with resentment. "You're the reason we keep ending up in dangerous situations." Then Kaval delivered the final blow with a smirk. But today, this will be the last time." He raised his hand in a mocking farewell. With that, the people who were once Kyoichiro's teammates turned their backs on him and walked away, grinning like it was some kind of game. On the other side of the portal, Kyoichiro pounded desperately against the barrier, eyes locked on their fading silhouettes. "Are you serious? Let me out of here." There was a hint of hope in his voice, but his heart was beginning to fracture. "You betrayed me over this." He clenched his fists, his mind reeling with memories of when all 6 of them had fought side by side, laughing, united. "As the leader of the Gold Hunters, I did everything I could to protect the world from monsters, and to protect all of you." He had always been the one charging into battle first. Always the shield. And yet, Kyoichiro gritted his teeth, slamming his fists over and over against the sealed portal. His eyes burned with fury. Why? But before he could even begin to process an answer, a monstrous growl came from behind. A pack of beasts surged toward him like starving wolves. Kyoichiro spun around and instantly killed one with a single strike. But then, he froze. Behind that creature was an unending swarm, dozens, maybe hundreds of monsters, closing in like a tidal wave of insects. He activated his power. His eyes glowed, piercing into the future. There has to be a way out. I can survive this. My future is but what he saw shattered him completely. Death. Death beneath the claws of those monsters. That was his future. Kyoichiro smiled faintly. It's gone now, hasn't it? Alone, he faced an overwhelming horde of monsters charging at him with reckless abandon. Gritting his teeth, he poured every ounce of rage into his clenched fist. He leapt into the air, ready to slam down a powerful strike on the swarm below. But the creatures kept coming wave after wave, like ants pouring from a nest, never ending. After a grueling battle, Kyoichiro collapsed to his knees, his body battered and broken. He bowed his head, arms limp at his sides. Blood streamed from his wounds, pooling beneath him into a growing crimson puddle. I couldn't change the future after all. He slowly lifted his head, eyes now cold as ice. Maybe I have no other choice left. The monsters kept swarming, ripping into his ravaged body, tearing flesh, splattering blood in every direction. And still, Kyoichiro resisted. He kicked the nearest monster skyward, refusing to give in. But there were still too many. He was surrounded. I won't die like this, not for nothing. Despite the agony, Kyoichiro's hand reached for the head of a nearby monster, trying to channel what little magic he had left. I'll reincarnate, and I'll come back stronger. I swear I'll have my revenge. Like a madman, he fought back, striking with reckless fury. I'll reach the peak of power. I'll never forget this rage. He swung his bloodied fist into the air. Until the day I can avenge myself, until I erase this regret from my soul. A massive surge of energy exploded from within him, rising from his palm and launching into the sky. The monsters surrounding him were blasted away, if only temporarily. But his body was on the brink of collapse, blood pouring from his eyes, ears and every pore. The brilliant light engulfed him, intensifying until it was blinding. Cut to another scene. Someone suddenly opened their eyes. A young man in a hospital gown sat up in bed and slowly slipped on his slippers, preparing to stand. He walked over to the mirror and stared at his reflection. A pale, slightly fragile-looking teenager stared back at him. Reaching out, he touched the glass. There was a strange glint of satisfaction in his eyes as he muttered coldly, "Looks like the reincarnation worked." That teenage boy in the mirror was Kyoichiro's new body. He looked around and finally took in his surroundings. A hospital. These machines look strange. His eyes narrowed. Just how many years have passed? If it's been 100 years, then it's too late for revenge. His expression darkened, filled with hatred as he recalled the smiling faces of those who had betrayed him. Suddenly, something caught his eye. He picked it up. It was a student ID card. Student ID number 1200002 Rachu Kasai Kuzuka Tribute. Void this Idaho confirms, he whispered. Looks like 20 years have passed since that day. His eyes widened in shock, then lit up with fierce excitement. Kyoichiro focused on the attribute listed, Void. A crooked grin spread across his face. And then he began to laugh. That grin twisted into something monstrous, his laughter echoing like a madman's. He recalled how, in his past life, his teammates had feared him because he was the strongest, wielding the time attribute. But over time, he'd realized there was a limit even to that power. Even the ability to see the future couldn't pierce the depths of a Void attribute. He couldn't read or measure the strength of someone who wielded Void. And now, that attribute belonged to him. Kyoichiro looked down at the hand of his new body. This poor kid, there was no doubt in his mind Void was the strongest attribute. It was like an endless, chaotic nothingness. A power without structure or order. But in Kyoichiro's previous life, no one had ever possessed it. It was so rare that nobody knew how to train it properly. His gaze returned to the student ID card. That's probably why he's still stuck at level 1. Koichiro stared at the picture of the young student on the card, and thought to himself, he was probably mocked, called the kid with no attribute more times than he could count. He pressed the card gently against his chest, right over his heart. "Don't worry, kid," he whispered. "I'll make your name known across the world as the strongest adventurer this world has ever seen." Thanks to his previous life's power, the ability to see into the future, Kyoichiro knew how to train the void attribute. He could perceive the flows of energy within a body and understand exactly how to nurture them into something extraordinary. He began activating the power of this new body. A brilliant light erupted around him, illuminating the entire room. "With this strength, I'll become unstoppable. And those traitors," he clenched his fist tightly, a sinister smile curling across his lips. "They'll live to regret betraying me and leaving me to die." Kyoichiro recalled Kevil's smiling face, that smug, satisfied grin at the moment of betrayal. And along with him, the faces of those who were once his most trusted comrades, grinning in delight as they turned against the one person who had always believed in them. To get revenge on them, I need to level up first. From this moment on, he thought, the Kyoichiro of my past life is dead. From now on, I am Kyusuke. He lay back down on the hospital bed and closed his eyes. The world around him faded to pitch black. Void attribute, just like its name, was a type of conditional magic rooted in nothingness. Its essence lay in the power to freely manifest imagination into reality. With his eyes shut tight, Kyosuke cleared his mind and focused. Magical energy began to stir. Imagination is something anyone can do, he thought. Like an artist picturing what they want to draw, but when it comes time to transfer that image to paper, it's never quite perfect. Turning thought into reality. That's the hard part. Fortunately, this body was still injured. Kyosuke's torso was tightly wrapped in white gauze, especially around his abdomen. If I project the image in my mind onto this body, he winced slightly and concentrated harder, building the image clearly in his thoughts. The magical energy he was gathering began to swirl into a soft, shimmering current of light. He envisioned each damaged cell slowly healing, guiding the energy to flow through every part of his wounded body, repairing every injury with the power of his imagination. A golden glow enveloped the wound on his arm, sparkling like starlight scattered across a galactic sky. Before his eyes, the injury on Kyosuke's arm began to fade, completely restored without a trace. The magic energy slowly dissipated. He bolted upright, stunned and overjoyed, staring down at his fully healed arm. Yes, it worked. Pressing his thumb against the skin near his right wrist, Kyosuke nodded to himself. It's still early stage magic, so the healing speed isn't that high. There are probably still internal injuries left. But if I keep repeating this, keep imagining and healing again and again, my level will rise. My control over imagination will grow. And this void attribute, it was vast, limitless, composed of countless elemental threads woven together. With practice, he could expand the scope of what he could make real. That was what made it so powerful. With this, he could create and wield multiple types of magic on his own. Fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, he could master them all. And someday, the things I see in my mind will be indistinguishable from the real world. Not even magical barriers or mirrors will be able to hold me back. They'll shatter to make space for the void. And the void will expand endlessly, like the universe itself. Kyosuke smiled. Just then, the door creaked open. A middle-aged doctor stood there holding a patient file, stunned. You're awake?" Kyosuke turned his head calmly toward the man. The doctor rushed over to check on him. "Don't move too much. You were badly injured, after being attacked by a monster." Kyosuke lifted the blanket and lay back down in the bed. "So that's what happened. That's the incident this boy experienced before I reincarnated into his body." The doctor looked at him with a bright, cheerful smile. Even though Kyosuke had been in critical condition, he still managed to wake up as if he had been blessed by a miracle from a saint. Kyosuke tilted his head curiously. "Wait, what did you say? A saint?" The doctor blinked in surprise. You don't know?" Kyosuke shook his head honestly. The doctor's expression lit up with reverence. His cheeks flushed with admiration as he said, "The saint of the 5 sacred sagers." Kyosuke froze. 5 sacred stars? I don't know what that is either, he replied, expression blank. The doctor adjusted his glasses, furrowed his brows, then glanced back at Kyosuke's chart. "Right, you just woke up. It makes sense that you'd be disoriented." He stood up, gently reassuring Kyosuke. "Anyway, I'll do a full checkup for you. Let me go get the tools, just stay right here, okay? Once the doctor left the room, Kyosuke tossed the blanket aside and sat up. The Saint Five Sacred Stars, could they be a rising noble family? Or maybe an adventurer faction that gained power in the past 20 years? He walked over to the table and picked up the remote lying beside it. Leveling up is still my priority, but I also need to get a solid grasp of the world's current state. He turned the TV on. A news broadcast echoed through the room. Today's special report: a look back at the dungeon catastrophe, Class 555, that occurred 20 years ago. Footage of that day played, monsters pouring onto city streets in an all-out disaster. Kyosuke narrowed his eyes. Seriously, a special feature on the day I was betrayed. He kept watching. And the one behind the incident, the screen showed his image from his past life. The leader of the Gold Hunters, a level 100 time user named Misato Keiichiro. Kyosuke's eyes widened in disbelief. What? He stared at the screen, frozen. I was the culprit. What the hell is this? The footage continued, showing monsters spilling out of dungeon gates, cities consumed in fire and chaos. He predicted the disaster, the anchor reported, but kept it to himself, planning to use the chaos to take over the world. The segment cut to the remaining members of the Gold Hunters. They stopped him, the voice declared, and became the legendary heroes known as the Five Sacred Stars. On screen, Kyosuke saw their faces, his former teammates. The same five who had betrayed him. The report showed them defeating Misato Keiichiro in a fierce battle and sealing the dungeon afterward. This miraculous event is remembered to this day. The Five Sacred Stars now lead the world in various domains. Kyosuke stood motionless in front of the screen, stunned. And later in this broadcast, we'll be joined by experts to discuss. Click. He turned off the TV. His reflection stared back at him on the blank screen. Kyosuke covered his mouth and began to laugh. It started quiet, but soon it twisted into manic laughter. His shoulders trembled with fury. Not only did they betray me, they smeared my name. They rewrote history. They sacrificed me. The image of his own bloodied face flashed through Kyosuke's mind, while they were showered with praise like celebrities, hailed as real heroes. They shamelessly took all the glory, basking in admiration from the entire world. Kyosuke's hand trembled with rage, still clutching the TV remote. I won't forgive them. I'll never forgive them. He clenched his teeth, jaw tight. His eyes were flooded with hatred. Every single one of them, I'll send them straight to hell. The hospital room fell silent. Kyosuke exhaled slowly, calming himself. He turned and walked toward the bedside table. But I need to be careful, I can't let them notice me too soon. He gently set the remote down. Then he reached for the phone on the table. Right, the teenager stared at the phone screen. Let's see what school this kid was attending. His lips curled into a smirk. The screen lit up. Just as I thought. Principal of Tokugo Adventurer Training Academy, Iwako Hideki. One of the Five Sacred Stars. Kyosuke gripped the phone tightly. Even just waking up, I already know where I've landed. That's some good luck. He sat back down on the edge of the bed, resting his chin on his hand and thought. But Iwako's a cautious one. He doesn't show weakness easily. His eyes drifted to the student ID card on the nightstand. It displayed his current identity and level. The level gap between us is still enormous. I can't beat him like this. Kyosuke dropped back onto the bed. He opened his palm, staring hard at it. There's nothing I can do at level 1. But I'll keep leveling up, and then I'll find him. He clenched his hand into a fist, eyes filled with resolve. Just wait, Iwako. You're first on my list. A few weeks later, sunlight streamed into the hospital room. Kyosuke stood in front of the mirror, twisting his torso, warming up his body. Perfect, he muttered. I can move without any issues now. He slipped on his jacket. Behind him, the doctor stared in disbelief. No way. You've fully recovered in just a few weeks. The man smiled with awe, thinking about the one he revered most. Could this truly be the saint's blessing? Kyosuke stood with his back turned, adjusting his tie in the mirror. His voice was cold. It wasn't that, he said flatly. Doctor, everything was thanks to my own power. Without another word, Kyosuke walked out of the room. He raised a hand casually. Thanks for taking care of me. The doctor called after him. Ah yes, of course. Take care out there. Outside the hospital, beneath a clear blue sky, Kyosuke stood tall. Alright, I've got the basics covered. He slipped his ID card into his pocket. This level will do for now. Time to warm up and hit the dungeon. A confident smile spread across his face. Sounds like a plan. Kyosuk recalled a conversation he'd had with the doctor back when he was still in the hospital. The man had sighed as he explained the background of this body. I remember what the doctor said. Apparently, Kyosuk's entire family died in an accident. Now, with both hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, Kyosuk walked alone along a wide city street. He spoke softly to the soul of the boy whose body he now inhabited. I do feel sorry for you, Kyosuk. Then he closed his eyes, thinking calmly. But for me this worked out perfectly. It means I can do whatever I want now. He took another step forward. Just across the street ahead of him was a large gate. Curious, he pulled out his phone and checked the map. So this is the place, huh? After scanning the area and taking in the details, Kyosuk pulled up his hood and adjusted the scarf covering his face. His eyes sharpened with determination. If I want to level up and grow stronger, this is where I start. He walked up to the gate security station and placed a card on the desk. But just as he did, the guard reached out, grabbed his wrist, and barked, "Hey kid." Kyosuk yanked his hand back, shooting the man a cold glare. "What is it?" The guard froze for a second under that icy stare. You're only level 27. He glanced at the idea, stunned. This area is restricted. Only adventurers who are level 30 or higher are allowed to form a party and enter. You're seriously thinking about going in alone? That's suicide. The man had reacted quickly out of genuine concern for Kyosuk's safety, but even as he tried to explain, he reached out again to hold Kyosuk back. Kyosuk remained completely calm. I get what you're saying. That may be true for most people. With that, he sharply brushed the man's hand aside. Then he raised his card up to eye level, letting the guard see it clearly. I'm a student at Tokigo Adventurer Training Academy, Kyosuk said flatly. As long as I sign the waiver, everything checks out, doesn't it? He had come fully prepared. I looked into this back when I was still in the hospital. He stared confidently at the guard. The man hesitated, clearly conflicted. Well, yeah, technically, that's true. But before the discussion could go any further, a voice rang out from behind Kyosuk. Alright, that's enough. Kyosuk's eyes widened. He turned to look over his shoulder. Across the street, standing near the base of a tree, were 3 figures watching him. One of them leaned against the tree and spoke with a cocky grin. Guys, just trying to help you. No need to act all tough. A second, with messy orange hair, laughed casually. They're just worried about you, newbie. The third gave Kyosuk a mocking stare. You're just a rookie, right? Best learn your place. Kyosuk didn't respond. He gave them a single glance, cold and unreadable. Then, without wasting another breath, he turned back to the security guard. I just need to sign here, right? Kyosuk pointed at the tablet screen on the desk. His voice remained calm, focused. He wasn't here to make a scene. He was here to level up. Without waiting for a reply, Kyosuk picked up the pen and confidently signed his name beneath the words "I agree" glowing on the screen. The security guard still tried to stop him. Wait. But Kyosuk didn't care. He finished signing, dropped the pen back onto the table, and turned to walk away, cold and composed, leaving the guard behind with a worried expression. Well, guess it's official now. He headed toward the gate alone. As he walked off, he casually raised a hand in the air, waving without turning back. Anyway, thanks for your concern. I appreciate it. The guard, watching him walk away, quickly turned toward the 3 people still gathered by the tree nearby. Hey you 3. Sorry, but could you keep an eye on that kid? The guy really was too kind for his own good. He explained to the trio, letting someone go in there alone at his level is basically sending him to his death. The shortest one with a split fringe scowled in annoyance. Huh? He stepped forward, getting heated. And why exactly should we do that for him? But before he could finish ranting, the purple-haired guy with glasses who had been quiet this whole time smiled and clapped his teammate on the shoulder. Actually, this might work out in our favor. The one with glasses continued, his voice low and scheming. No one's watching him, right? His 2 teammates blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in tone. The bespectacled one gave them both a devilish grin, his eyes gleaming. Even if something happens, no one would care. The 3 immediately caught the vibe. Their lips curled into smug, wicked grins, and they took off running toward the gate, laughing with twisted glee. A little brat trying to act all tough. He's 100 years too early to mess with us. The kind-hearted guard, still unaware that he'd asked the worst possible people for help, waved them off gratefully. Sorry to trouble you. I'm counting on you guys. The 3 of them entered the gate after Kyosuk. On the other side was a long, torchlit tunnel. But as they scanned the seemingly endless corridor, there was no sign of the boy anywhere. Glasses guy chuckled. All right, you know the drill. Orange hair nodded, smirking. We kill the kid, then blame the monsters. They remembered clearly the last person they'd slaughtered in a dungeon like this. The guy's body was wrecked. Blood splattered across the walls and floor. Meanwhile, they'd just stood around with hands in their pockets, admiring the scene they'd created. Thanks to these dumbasses, one of them had said back then, our wallets just keep getting fatter. Their method was simple: find solo adventurers in the dungeon, kill them, and steal everything: money, gems, valuables. No one ever questioned it. Buzzing with excitement at the thought of another easy payday, the trio bolted deeper into the tunnel. 10 minutes passed. They were still running. Panting and winded, Glasses Guy asked, "This tunnel, it's just been a straight path, right?" Orange Hair was out of breath too. "Yeah, but we still haven't caught up to him." Then, suddenly they stopped. Orange Hair pointed ahead. "Look, there." Up ahead in the tunnel, Kyosuke stood alone, facing down a massive swarm of monsters. "There he is," they muttered. Energy rippled from Kyosuke's entire body. His eyes were cold and razor-sharp. With a single sweeping motion, he slashed the air and a roaring wave of fire erupted forward. Then, raising his right hand to head level, Kyosuke summoned another spell, this time a spinning vortex, forming in his palm like a miniature tornado. With a swift thrust, he launched it alongside the flames. The fire and wind magic surged forward in perfect sync. The flames were so intense that as soon as they touched the monsters, the creatures disintegrated, unable to escape in time. In just seconds, what had been a sea of monsters moments ago was reduced to piles of ash. The tunnel fell silent, cleared completely. The three who had followed Kyosuke into the dungeon stood frozen behind him, stunned beyond words. The guy with glasses stared, mouth agape. No way, even the short one was in disbelief. He took out a D-rank monster, all by himself. The corner of the orange-haired guy's mouth twitched upward. He pointed toward Kyosuke. More importantly, look. Glowing faintly under the dim dungeon light was something dazzling, rare loot. A pouch stuffed with glittering gems and more precious stones scattered across the ground. Their 6 eyes lit up at once. Their jaws practically hit the floor. "If we sell all that, we could live easy for like 6 months," one of them muttered, eyes gleaming with greed. They'd been watching, and Kyosuke still hadn't reacted. He was quietly gathering the gems, seemingly unaware of their presence. "What an idiot. He doesn't even know we're here. That rare loot's ours now," one of them sneered. Without hesitation, they sprang into action. One of them leapt high onto the ceiling of the tunnel. Orange Hair clung upside down like a spider. Glasses Guy looked up at him and smiled. Shorty moved into position. Glasses Guy glanced at both of them, nodded, and whispered, "Now." The three launched their spells simultaneously: water magic, wind magic, and a fiery attack. Their goal was clear. Kill him. Kyosuke, still crouched among the loot, yanked down his mask and snarled, "Son of a," he stood up sharply, fury flashing in his eyes. "You think that was slick? You really thought that would work?" A swirl of magic shimmered around him. As their attacks came in fast, Kyosuke moved faster, slipping between the slicing wind and surging water like he was dancing. "Doesn't matter the era," he muttered coldly, his voice low and scornful. "There's always scum who try to take what's not theirs." Orange Hair and Split Fringe landed hard, eyes wide in disbelief. "No way. He dodged that. How the hell does he have eyes on the back of his head?" Glasses Guy refused to believe it. Snarling, he conjured a fireball and lunged at Kyosuke from behind. Must been a fluke. Die already. But Kyosuke didn't dodge. He turned around, focus sharp, fist clenched tight. He slammed his fist straight into Glasses Guy's gut. The fireball fizzled out on contact. Blood erupted from his mouth, as the sheer force of Kyosuke's punch sent him flying across the tunnel. His body hit the dungeon wall with a sickening crash, an entire section of the tunnel crumbling from the impact. The dust settled. Glasses Guy was left crumpled and motionless, sprawled across the shattered wall. Kyosuke stood calmly, ignoring the destruction. Turning back to his loot like swatting flies was just another part of the job. "To trash like you," he said, voice steady and merciless, "I show no mercy." The remaining two were paralyzed with fear, rooted to the spot. Kyosuke stomped once, the ground trembling beneath him. "And I won't hesitate to use worms like you as stepping stones." His eyes burned like a death god's, be cold, relentless, and full of vengeance. "Because this grudge I carry," he whispered, eyes narrowing, "starts now." Outside the dungeon gate, the sky remained just as calm and blue as ever. At that moment, another figure stepped inside. A handsome man in a long cloak, arms crossed, radiating arrogance. He was Awako's subordinate, Yoichi Sudai. "I came after hearing a student from the academy entered the dungeon alone," he muttered. But then he saw the 3 bodies on the ground. Why are there rookie adventurers lying dead here? His brow furrowed. What the hell happened? Scene shift. Night had fallen over the city, but in a high-rise apartment with lights still on. Kyosuke sat quietly in his room. He stared down at his ID card, turning it over in his hand. In that D-rank dungeon I managed to level up and test out void magic. His eyes focused on a specific detail: his new magic. Information concealment. A sinister smile curled across his lips. I can fake my level, and even erase my dungeon entry record. That'll come in handy. Lying back in bed, he pulled up the news on his phone. Tomorrow's my first day at the academy. A notification caught his eye: an incident from the day before. Pay up, you useless magicless freak. Kyosuke scowled. So that's what that was. The next morning students made their way to school. Kyosuke walked alone, backpack slung over one shoulder, until someone called out to him. Kyosuke. He turned. A cheerful girl with an energetic smile waved excitedly at him. Asahi Karin, his classmate. Good morning. Are you feeling better now? He gave a polite nod. Thanks, I'm fine. She let out a sigh of relief, visibly reassured. Phew, I was really worried about you. Kyosuke's eyes softened a little. So there is someone who cares about him after all. But their exchange was cut short by a snide voice. Well. Look who's back, the magicless loser who barely survived. Kyosuke turned to see three guys approaching, one with red hair, one green, and one blue, all smirking with disdain. I had to protect your weak little level 1 ass, the ringleader sneered. Don't you think I deserve some sort of reward for that? He leaned in arrogantly. You brought it, right? I'm a bit short on cash, Kyosuke immediately recalled the message from the night before. So it really was them. Karin quickly stepped in front of Kyosuke, her expression firm despite the slight tremble in her hands. Stop it. Kyosuke just got out of the hospital. Her courage surprised him. He noticed the way her hand tightly gripped the strap of her bag, trembling slightly. He gently stepped forward, placing himself between her and the bullies. Thanks, he said quietly. But I've got this. The two guys behind the leader burst out laughing. Dude, do you hear that? The little zero attribute shrimp's acting tough. The red-haired leader cracked his knuckles, looking down on Kyosuke. Let me remind you of something. You're a worthless nobody. You can't even use magic. Kyosuke looked straight into his eyes. You're the ones who need to be reminded of your place. The laughter stopped. Their smirks faded as confusion crept into their faces. Huh? Kyosuke, standing tall in front of the same bastards who used to torment the old Kyosuke, whispered inwardly, unlike scum like you, rest easy kid. I'll make your name echo across the world as the strongest adventurer alive. Kyosuke raised his hand. I'm someone who keeps his promises. His calm confidence made the red-haired bully snap. Furious, the guy conjured a fireball above his head and screamed. What the hell are you even talking about? Karen's eyes widened in panic. You can't. Using magic outside the dungeon is against school rules. But the bully didn't care. Shut up. That trash with no attribute is the one who's wrong. He dared to stand up to me. He hurled the fireball straight at Kyosuke. But Kyosuke didn't flinch. His brow furrowed slightly, and he calmly raised his own hand, conjuring a fireball of his own, one that was 3 times the size. With a sharp flick of his wrist, he launched it forward. The two spells collided in midair, boom, scattering embers everywhere like fireworks. The two lackeys behind the red-haired guy froze, jaws dropping. No way. That's the same spell. How the hell can he use it? Even the ringleader was stunned. What is this? Kyosuke's voice was cold and flat. That's it? That one line hit harder than any punch. The bully's face twisted in humiliation. You bastard, losing it completely, he barked at his friends. What are you two doing? Help me take him down. The two thugs quickly sprang into action, casting their own spells, wind and water, just like the two losers in the dungeon before. But Kyosuke didn't even put his backpack down. He lifted both hands and casually cast both wind and water magic at once, countering their attacks effortlessly. The 3 bullies could only gape in horror. What the hell is this? How many types of magic does he know? This isn't normal. Their panic hadn't even settled before Kyosuke said just one word: satisfied. He snapped his fingers. Good. Now it's my turn. A massive wave of magical energy burst from behind him like a raging storm. With clenched fists, Kyosuke slowly walked forward, his voice calm but terrifying. Don't worry. I won't kill you, at least not yet. That was enough to make all 3 of them lose it. Shit. They turned and bolted. But Kyosuke's voice echoed like a demon from the abyss. You begged them to help you, didn't you? He reached out and grabbed the leader by the shoulder mid-sprint. And what did they do back then? His eyes were void of emotion, cold and unfeeling, like a machine made to destroy. You know what? I don't even need your answer. He gripped the guy's face, squeezing hard. Sweat poured down the bully's face as he struggled to pry Kyosuke's hand off, but it wouldn't budge. You scum always say the same thing, Kyosuke said coldly. The guy had tears in his eyes now. And that's why, no matter what you say, I won't stop this fist. Kyosuke's eyes narrowed, filled with nothing but hatred. His fist, powered by a swirling blend of multiple elemental forces, slammed into the bully's face. Crack! The guy was instantly knocked out cold, blood spraying from his nose as his limp body collapsed to the ground. The bully's body shot through the air like a missile before crashing down hard, skidding along the pavement until it finally came to a smoking stop. He lay sprawled out on the street, arms and legs wide open, completely motionless. Karen stood frozen in shock, both hands covering her mouth. A sigh, Kyosuke, the two lackeys scrambled to pick up their unconscious leader, their faces pale with fear. From this moment on, no one would dare underestimate Kyosuke ever again. A sly, wicked grin spread across Kyosuke's face. Let's walk this road together, he said quietly. The road to becoming the world's strongest adventurer. Apologies echoed through the school grounds. We're sorry. We're really sorry. The two lackeys were practically dragging their unconscious leader along. Please. We said we're sorry, okay? Once they were far enough away, the leader clenched his teeth, muttering under his breath in frustration, damn it, he's completely different since he got out of the hospital. Kyosuke closed his eyes and muttered softly. In the end, there's really nothing special about him. Karen peeked at him in confusion, unsure of what he meant. The two walked side by side down the hallway. All around them, classmates watched with uneasy eyes, whispers and side glances filled the air. But no one said a word to them. Kyosuke quickly picked up on the strange atmosphere. Am I drawing too much attention? Just as he and Karen were about to step into class, someone behind them reached out and placed a hand on a student's shoulder. Excuse me, 1 second. The voice was calm but firm. You're Asai Kyosuke, right? Kyosuke turned to look. A cool-looking guy with sharp features and a reserved expression tilted his head politely. Do you have a moment to talk? Kyosuke eyed him suspiciously. Who is this guy? He's got that noble air about him. Ugh, headache. Should I just ignore him? Still unsure, Kyosuke gave a sheepish smile and raised a hand, trying to excuse himself. Sorry, class is about to start, but the guy cut him off smoothly. Ah, that's right. I haven't introduced myself yet. He straightened up confidently in the middle of the hallway. My name is Yoichi Tsudai, leader of Cat Biter. Karen froze in surprise. Cat Biter. Kyosuke's face went cold. That's the group formed by Principal Iwako. His hand, already on the classroom door, paused mid-motion. Tsudai continued, voice low and ominous. I'll ask again, Asai. He smiled, but it was anything but friendly. Would you mind giving me just a moment of your time? Kyosuke stayed silent. Then he slowly turned around and offered a polite smile. Well, I guess I don't have much of a choice, do I? Scene shift, an empty classroom. Tsudai leaned against the teacher's desk, tone serious. I'll get straight to the point. Were you the one who took out those adventurers found in the D-rank dungeon last night? Kyosuke stared at him blankly, feigning ignorance. I don't know what you're talking about. But inside his mind was racing. That info should been classified. How does he know? His eyes sharpened as he looked at Tsudai. Tsudai kept going unfazed. I was informed that a student had entered the dungeon alone. I went to investigate. He paused, gaze hard. What I found were the corpses of a notorious group known for preying on rookies. And more than that, Tsudai's tone darkened. This morning you used multi-elemental magic in public, didn't you? Kyosuke laughed inwardly. So he doesn't actually know the full extent of my magic yet. But Tsudai wasn't letting up. He pointed directly at Kyosuke. So I'll ask again, tell me the truth. Was it you who took them down? Kyosuke turned to dig through his pocket. Since I was ambushed this morning, I honestly don't remember much of what happened. He pulled out his student ID card and gave a helpless smile. I'm only level 1. How could I possibly do something like that? Tsudai stared at the card, stunned. The information on it was crystal clear, level 1, and void attribute. Looking at Kyosuke's harmless smile, Tsudai immediately dismissed him in his mind. Just another nobody wasting my time. He gritted his teeth in irritation. Then, without another word, he turned and opened the classroom door to leave. Before exiting, he tossed out a half-hearted remark. Sorry for dragging you here. He paused in the doorway, glanced back with a bored expression. Don't go doing anything suspicious. I hate having to write extra reports. Kyosuke stood in the hallway, watching Sudai's back disappear down the corridor. That guy Sudai. A sly grin crept onto his face. Maybe I can use him. He's close to Iwako, and I can approach him without raising suspicion. If I play this right, could I turn him into one of my pawns? Kyosuke's grin widened. Actually, isn't this the perfect time to test out that spell? Scene shift: a sleek, luxurious office. Sudai stood stiffly, delivering his report to a figure seated with his back turned toward a towering bookshelf. That concludes my report on the incident in the D-rank dungeon last night. The man, legs crossed, rested his cheek on his hand while lounging in a leather chair. You made a mistake. His voice dripped with disdain. His hair slicked back to perfection, fingers glittering with rings. Iwako Hideki, headmaster of Tokigo Adventurer Training Academy and one of the 5 holy stars. I told you to be careful about who you use, he said sharply. Sudai bowed deeply. My sincerest apologies, sir. I'll smooth things over immediately. Iwako stood and slowly walked over to him. You'd better. He stopped in front of the young man, still bent at the waist. If word gets out that you were linked to rookie hunting, I'll take heat for it too. He grabbed Sudai's chin and forced him to look up, his face close and twisted like a devil's mask. Don't forget that. One slip, and I'll have you kicked out myself. I understand, Headmaster Awako. Sudai shouted, bowing even lower. But where Awako couldn't see, Sudai clenched his teeth in silent fury. Damn it, why am I the one cleaning up this mess? If I knew it would turn out like this, I would have squeezed more hush money out of those bastards first. So it turns out even Sudai wasn't clean. He had been accepting bribes from the very thugs Kyosuke destroyed in the dungeon. Now, bitter and quietly fuming under Awako's glare, he forced himself to swallow his anger. Hideki had returned to his desk, but his tone was far from relaxed. Still, there's one thing I can't quite make sense of. Sudai raised his head, curiosity piqued. And that is, sir. Hideki picked up his tablet. According to your report, the student in question had to be at least a 3rd year. He tapped the screen, which clearly showed no 3rd-year students entered the dungeon last night. He placed the tablet back onto its dock and continued, hands folded behind his back as he walked past Sudai. In that case, the more likely scenario is that they were killed by the monsters while hunting rookies. He shot a cold glance at Sudai. And you're covering it up. The color drained from Sudai's face. Hideki moved to the window, folding his hands behind his back again, staring out at the peaceful blue sky. Rather than believe that one of my students defeated a team of rookie hunting criminals alone, this is simply the more realistic conclusion. Sudai's breath hitched. I see, so that's how it is. Without turning around, Hideki replied, exactly. Unless, of course, something extremely unusual happened. Sudai's eyes widened at that. Unusual, could it be? He suddenly remembered something. Kyosuke's student ID, void attribute, level 1. A surge of anxiety mixed with realization crept into his voice. Headmaster Awako, is there any chance this could be related to a special attribute? Hideki stroked his chin thoughtfully. A special attribute, that is a possibility. Hearing that, Sudai's lips curled upward into a wicked grin. He placed a hand on his chest confidently. Headmaster Iwako, please allow me to handle this matter personally. Once again, his sights had turned toward our main character, Kyosuke. Sudai narrowed his eyes, his voice oozing malice, as he made his declaration, I'll take care of this permanently. On the stone wall, a torch blazed fiercely, scattering glowing red embers into the air. A group of young men in matching uniforms unleashed a surge of energy in the same direction. One of them shouted in a rush, I saw it. It's heading that way. The creature, a berserk monkey, suddenly swelled in size. It let out a terrifying roar, its blood-red eyes burning with rage, as if ready to devour everything in sight. At that moment, one of the students focused a whirlpool of energy into the center of his palm, forming a spiraling vortex of raw power. He hurled it straight at the frenzied beast, striking it dead on and making it shriek in agony. The students recoiled, eyes wide in fear as they watched the raging monkey collapse in front of them, cold sweat dripping from their faces. It was Sudai who had landed the final blow. He raised his voice sternly, commanding students, do not break formation. Everyone stared in awe at the monster's twitching body. Murmurs of admiration rippled through the group. Yoichi's incredible. Well, of course he was personally chosen by Headmaster Iwako. I'm seriously thinking of joining Cat Fang now. Sudai stood quietly for a moment, looking over the pile of fallen monsters with a calm expression. That's it, he said softly. I've cleared the area. Great job, Yoichi. The students chorused behind him. Without responding, Sudai turned and walked away, giving one final order. I'll leave the rest to you guys. Understood. As he walked, Sudai muttered to himself, now, time for the real reason I came here. He slipped one hand inside his coat and pulled out a small chain with a strange, arcane surface. Holding it carefully in his palm, he whispered, reveal Asai Kyosuke's location. The moment the words left his mouth, he flung the chain forward and channeled a swirl of green energy into it. The chain tightened and shot out rapidly, pulling taut with force. Sudai gripped the tail end firmly and felt it tug sharply, as if drawn by an unseen force. Just as I thought, he's far from the other students. Receiving the direction, Sudai began briskly walking, following the pull of the enchanted chain. I don't know what that guy's up to, but this actually works in my favor. His thoughts grew darker with each step, his lips curling into a twisted smile. If it goes the way I expect, no one will question how he died. Just a tragic accident, I just happened to find Asai by chance. Stuff like that happens all the time in dungeons, he reasoned, grinning slyly to himself. Something then flashed through his mind. He paused, deep in thought. First the incident with the rookie hunters, then the string of strange events since he was discharged from the hospital. He remembered the image from earlier, watching everything from above. And one moment in particular stood out. But most of all, Sudai's expression darkened as he recalled the scene in the classroom. What they said back there, I need to know more about it. Back then, he had asked the question in a tone of utter disbelief, is that really true? Kneeling before him was a group of battered students, one of them with his face wrapped in bandages. A red-haired boy quickly chimed in, desperation in his voice, it's true. I swear. That attribute-less freak, he attacked us using the exact same magic we were using. Another, a blonde, seemed to be recalling something terrifying. His voice trembled. And not just that, he summoned a giant firestorm. I've never seen anything like it. In his memory, Kyosuke calmly walked away as a titanic wall of flames surged up behind him, towering 10 times his own size. Sudai stared at the trembling boys, his face twisted in disbelief. This is insane, he muttered, unable to believe what he was hearing. Then he stood up, tone suddenly cold and indifferent. That's all I needed to ask. The students panicked. One of them stuttered. Wait, then, Sudai paused, still facing away, and replied icily, teach these failures a lesson. I've got no use for weaklings who got crushed by some talentless reject. No way. That's not what you promised. The redhead cried out, reaching for Sudai, but being restrained by the others. Then a bruised student with teal hair, his face covered in cuts, spoke hoarsely. That guy, he's not. His words made Sudai stop mid-step. He's not even human anymore. His voice cracked with fear, his eyes completely vacant, like someone who had stared into the abyss and barely made it back. Meanwhile, Sudai was still following the chain's pull. It had led him to a vast open area, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He kept walking, but his mind lingered on that terrified face. That fear, it wasn't normal. Just to be sure, he muttered to himself, I had him put in the Cat Fang special class, and all he showed was an illusion spell. That's it. Behind him lay dozens of monster corpses, littering the floor. He must have used some kind of artifact, Sudai rationalized. Or some dirty trick to kill those rookie hunters. The thought amused him, and he let out a smug chuckle. Looking down, he spotted the body of a goblin, its entire body ravaged. Another corpse. Did Asai Kyosuke do this? He wondered. Examining the blood and damage, he analyzed aloud, just one hit. Maybe what they said wasn't all nonsense. Still, he scoffed. But even with this kind of power, it's hardly terrifying. His expression grew arrogant as his thoughts drifted to Iwako, director of Tokigo Academy. Even Iwako, the guy who got kicked out of the 5-star council, was able to reach that high. His convictions sharpened. For now, I'll play along and follow his orders. But someday, I'll surpass him. One day I'll sit atop the 5-star council myself, and rule the world. A delusional smile spread across his face as his eyes gleamed with ambition. But to get there, he calculated silently, I have to erase any connection to those rookie hunters. And as for Asai Kyosuke, a wildcard like him, someone who might cause problems later, I'll make sure a little accident just happens to him. His grin curled up dangerously, almost stretching to his ears. The enchanted chain continued pulling forward, and Sudai whispered to himself, he's close now, he has to be. The chain in Sudai's hand finally began to slow down, like it had found its destination. He reeled it back in and ducked behind a corner, cautiously peering around to assess the situation. What the hell is he doing in a place like this? Sudai wondered. But then his face contorted in horror. His eyes widened, and cold sweat poured down his forehead. Right in front of him, Kyosuke sat calmly atop a pile of monster corpses, a smug smile playing at the corners of his lips. "You're late," he said with a chilling grin. "I was getting bored waiting for you." Sudai immediately ducked behind the wall, his body trembling. "What? My presence should have been completely concealed. How the hell did he detect me?" As if reading his thoughts, Kyusuke continued with eerie calmness, "You're wondering how I noticed you, aren't you, Yoichi?" Sudai clenched his teeth. His eyes now burned with frustration and disgust. Did he read my mind? Finally, Sudai stepped out, his tone bitter and sharp. "What the hell are you?" Kyosuke's voice was steady, almost amused. "I heard Awako picked you," he said, looking Sudai up and down with disappointment. "But you're not nearly as impressive as I expected." He cast his gaze downward, his tone growing colder. "The way you hunt down rookies and bleed them for cash, it's just like that coward Iwako." Rage flashed across Sudai's face. "What? How do you know about that?" Kyosuke leapt down from the corpse pile. His voice was slow and deliberate. "Yoichi, tell me, do you enjoy tormenting others?" Light from above cast long shadows behind him, giving his figure an overwhelming presence. "But you've never felt what it's like to be hunted yourself, have you?" Kyusuke's eyes burned with intensity. "So now, I'll teach you what that feels like." There was no mercy in his expression, only cold calculation, and the faint thrill of revenge. "With this magic, I'll make you pay for what you did to me." His face hardened into something that looked all too eager for blood, for justice, or maybe just for balance. Looking at Kyosuke's overwhelming presence, Sudai gritted his teeth in fury. "You're dangerous, way too dangerous," he growled, his eyes burning with rage. But even as the words left his mouth, he summoned his weapon, a gleaming golden sword that radiated a strange, almost divine energy. "For the sake of my ambition," he declared. With a sharp step forward, Sudai launched himself at Kyosuke, slashing with lethal intent. "I'll defeat you right here, no matter what it takes." Kyosuke, calm as ever, casually sidestepped the attack, both hands still resting in his pockets. His body language showed no urgency, only effortless ease. As he raised a hand, a surge of power gathered in his palm. His voice was laced with mockery. "Is that all you've got? That's your so-called real power?" He hurled a massive blaze of fire so large it looked like it could swallow the entire battlefield. Sudai swung his glowing sword with confidence, sneering, "You think that's enough to beat me?" But before the words had fully left his lips, a bolt of strange, blue lightning came crashing down from above. Acting on pure instinct, Sudai raised his sword to block it just in time. Chunks of stone broke loose under his feet. But instead of falling, the shattered pieces were surrounded by a yellow aura and began floating ominously in the air. They hovered for only a second before launching themselves at him like projectiles. Sudai tightened his grip, planting his feet and shifting into a combat stance, his expression fierce. "Damn it, he really can use multi-element magic," he muttered. "What even is that void attribute of his?" Before he could finish the thought, Kyosuke vanished only to reappear behind him in an instant, eyes razor-sharp. Sudai sensed something and spun around just in time, barely managing to block Kyosuke's strike. "Damn you, you're always in the way of my plans," he spat through clenched teeth. The clash sent both of them skidding backward, tearing long grooves into the earth as they struggled to stay on their feet. Kyosuke remained cool, his voice flat. "Your plans, huh?" Sudai straightened himself, face filled with pride. "That's right. One day, I'll surpass Iwako." He laughed with unchecked arrogance. "I'll replace him and take my place among the 5 holy stars." Kyosuke's eyes narrowed, tone sharpened by suspicion. "Why Iwako? Why him of all people?" "There are others in the 5 holy stars," Kyosuke added. Sudai gave a smirk, answering slowly and with measured disdain. "Because he was the weakest of them." His grin widened, eyes gleaming with malice. "He's the one who was cast out from the ranks of the holy stars. If I take that seat, then the power to rule this world will be mine." He paused dramatically, then chuckled darkly. "So if you think about it, aiming for the weakest one makes the most sense, doesn't it?" Kyosuke turned his head, his face twisted in disgust at Sudai's filthy ambitions. With a cold edge in his voice, he muttered just one word: pathetic. Sudai's eyes flared with fury. "What did you just say?" A mysterious blue light radiated around Kyosuke as he raised his sword and rested it casually on his shoulder. One hand braced at his hip. He looked down at Sudai, spoke with calm disdain. "I used to worry you'd get to Awako before I could. But if this is the extent of your ambition, just power, money, and women, then I've got nothing to worry about." He lowered his gaze, his whole expression filled with contempt and revulsion. Those words struck something in Sudai. His grin faded instantly, replaced by wild fury. His eyes went wide as he glared at Kyosuke standing calmly before him. Gripping his sword tightly, Sudai charged forward, rage pouring out of him. Shut your damn mouth. What's so wrong with wanting power? Wanting money? Wanting women? He slashed furiously, yelling louder with each swing. Strength that lets you crush others, walk over them without consequence, that's the kind of strength I want. With each strike, his twisted obsession became more apparent. And then his lips curled into a deranged smile. If I become one of the 5 holy stars, I can have anything I want. And once I reach that seat, his voice lowered to something vile and grotesque. I'll uncover the Saintess's weakness. And then I'll make that woman mine. His words were sick, his thoughts poisonous enough to make any decent soul recoil. But Kyosuke didn't flinch. As they clashed blades again, he answered flatly. Sounds like nothing you say is worth listening to. It's time to end this. With that, Kyosuke swung his sword in one powerful arc, sending Sudai flying backward. Sudai hit the ground hard, looking up at the fractured remains of his blade. Panic set in. My sword, no way. Kyosuke, emotionless, tossed his own sword aside. Thanks to all that useless garbage you just said. I've finally finished preparing my spell. Sudai's eyes went wide with terror. No, stay away from me. Kyosuke stepped forward, dark eyes gleaming with deadly focus. Let's see how well you squirm now. Then, with a low voice that carried the weight of finality, he invoked absolute hypnosis. The moment the spell was cast, Sudai, who had been thrashing violently, suddenly froze. His entire face went blank and lifeless. Then, like a toppled statue, his body collapsed to the ground with a loud thud. Kyosuke looked down at him in silence, his mind calmly analyzing the situation. This spell only works after the caster completely breaks the target's will. But once it takes effect, he spoke aloud, voice steady, get up. Slowly. Each of Sudai's fingers began to move. It was as if some invisible force was lifting his body, although it remained stiff as a wooden doll. His head tilted slightly as he responded in a hollow, robotic voice, yes sir. I am now standing. Kyosuke let out a subtle smirk. Looks like it worked. He gave his next command, voice low and deliberate for now. Just focus on completing your current mission. I'll give further orders later. Sudai responded, his tone oddly warped and glitchy. Understood. I understand. As if something about the state made him uncomfortable, Kyosuke followed up with drop the act. Speak normally. The moment he gave that order, a faint light flickered in Sudai's eyes like something had snapped back into place. His expression returned to something close to normal. And his voice came out steady. I'll go back and take charge of the group. Kyosuke stood there watching Sudai slowly walk away. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. Then, almost without realizing, he smiled just faintly, his gaze sharpening with a glint of cunning delight. At that moment, stepping out from the shadows, Kyosuke was met with a sweet, concerned voice. Kyosuke. Where have you been? Karin came running over, worry written all over her face. I was really starting to get scared. Kyosuke offered her a sheepish smile, the hint of apology in his tone. Ah, sorry about that, I was just having a quick chat with Yoichi. Karin looked surprised. With Yoichi? What were you two talking about? Kyosuke replied calmly, almost too casually. Oh, just how to turn dreams into reality. Karin smiled warmly. Did he give you any good advice? In his mind, Kyosuke flashed back to Sudai's lifeless stare under hypnosis. The thought amused him more than he expected, but his expression remained calm and collected. Yeah, he said with a chuckle. He gave me something very helpful. Thanks to him, one of my dreams will definitely come true. I hope it comes true soon, Kyosuke, Karin said cheerfully. He replied softly, yeah, me too. Suddenly, a voice called out in the distance, the special class is about to end. All students, gather immediately. Karin turned toward the source of the announcement and nudged him. Let's go, Kyosuke will be left behind. As she ran ahead, Kyosuke watched her back thoughtfully. I'm really glad I joined this class, he mused. Because now, I finally have a pawn close to Waiwako, one he'll never suspect. A subtle smile crept across his face, one of quiet satisfaction, barely noticeable, but unmistakably smug. At the Tokigo Academy's principal's office, Hideki sat leisurely in his plush executive chair. Spinning it slightly, he glanced irritably at the man before him and asked, well? Any progress on the trainee hunter incident? Sudai bowed respectfully and handed over a thick file. Yes, sir. As expected, there's a student with a unique ability involved in the matter. Inside the folder was a familiar student profile. The Idaho photo clipped to it was instantly recognizable. The student's name is Asai Kusuke, a first year with a void attribute. Sudai reported with utmost seriousness, I've already detained him at the usual location and conducted an interrogation. He admitted to using multi-elemental magic to defeat the trainee hunters. Hideki suddenly froze. His gaze narrowed as he questioned with suspicion, multi-elemental magic. What are you talking about? Just as Tsuze predicted, Hideki's reaction confirmed the information had shaken him. But Tsudai didn't show everything in one go. To avoid disrupting his plan, he opted to hold some cards back. At the moment, the details are still unclear. But if you grant me more time, I believe I'll be able to uncover the full truth. Then, he added with a sly grin. By the way, it's been a while since you've gotten involved directly, hasn't it? Why not handle this one yourself for a change? The look on his face was twisted with scheming amusement. His eyes gleamed dangerously, and the corners of his mouth curled into a calculating smirk. Hideki, not suspecting a thing, leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling thoughtfully. Doesn't sound too bad. Cracking his fingers one by one with loud snaps, his eyes lit up not with concern, but with boredom masked as eagerness. It's been far too long since I last tortured someone. I'll make sure he pays dearly for everything he's done to me and to you. Without missing a beat, Tsudai responded, then shall we? But just as he was speaking, the shrill ring of a desk phone interrupted them. Hideki frowned and glanced at the phone, annoyed. Tech. Who the hell's calling at this hour? Waving his hand toward Tsudai, he gestured for him to leave. I'll be along shortly. Yes sir. Then I'll see you later. Tsudai bowed again, and took his leave. Hideki picked up the phone and answered bluntly, Iwako speaking. A sharp-tongued female voice rang through the receiver. Oh, isn't it the great principal himself? Thank you so much for choosing our company in yesterday's bidding process. The moment he heard her voice, Hideki instantly knew who it was. His face twisted with irritation. Cut the act. On the other end was a strikingly beautiful woman, fashionably styled with a sharp bob cut and an aura of sheer opulence. She smiled, obviously toying with him. Oh? Not falling for my charm today. After all, she added with a chuckle, we are partners in siphoning off the government grant money, aren't we? This was none other than Lei Ruwaxi, the CEO of Lei Company and one of the members of the Holy Pentad. Leaning back into his chair, Hideki responded coolly, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I don't have time for games. He was already preparing to deal with Kyosuke personally, so he brushed her off. Sorry, but I'm busy. Let's talk some other time. But Ruwaxi responded with cutting sarcasm. What could possibly keep you, the all-powerful principal who runs the academy and pockets half the budget, so busy? Struck at his sorest nerve, Hideki snapped in rage, watch your mouth. But he quickly calmed down, there were more pressing matters at hand. He exhaled sharply, brushing it off. Forget it. I'm currently investigating a student with a void attribute. Ruwaxi sounded surprised. Void attribute? What could a failure like that possibly achieve? Hideki didn't bother to explain. His tone remained casual. Yes, well, it's still a special attribute after all. But his voice and expression suddenly shifted, becoming more serious. And with that, anything could happen, right? Ruwaxi fell silent for a moment. Then her beautiful face took on a subtly sinister expression. You're talking about something like Kyoichiro's time magic, aren't you? The mention of that familiar name made Hideki's expression immediately change. His grip tightened on the phone, eyes filled with deep-seated hatred. Don't mention that name, he shouted into the receiver. It makes me sick. Ruwaxi had to pull the phone away to protect her ears. She chuckled lightly. Still as hot-headed as ever, huh? But her eyes, too, carried a flash of resentment. Despite her teasing, she understood his reaction. I don't blame you, she said coldly. Ever since he awakened that power, the balance of power among adventurers has completely shifted. Her red lips curled into a dangerous smile. Not wanting to interfere further, she decided to end the call. Well, I'll contact you again later. See you. Only the dial tone remained on the other end. After hanging up, Hideki's expression turned venomous. He slammed the phone onto his desk, hissing, selfish little vixen. But Ruwaxi wasn't the only one fueling his anger. The true source was the old friend they'd just mentioned. He muttered bitterly. Even hearing that cursed name after all these years is enough to set me off. His face darkened. Behind his eyes, some sinister calculation was brewing. Which means now's the perfect time to unleash all this rage. Sometime later, just as Tsudai had suggested, Hideki decided to go investigate this first-year void student personally. He made his way deep into the forest, heading toward the old factory just a few steps ahead. As he approached the door, his thoughts drifted. Now then, how should I torture him? Waterboarding. Pulling out fingernails. One after another, gruesome punishments flashed through his mind. He spotted the lock on the door and used his fingerprint to activate it. A twisted grin spread across his face. The anticipation of indulging in his sadistic hobby sent a shiver of excitement through him. I'll take out all the fury I couldn't unleash on Kyoichio, on you instead. The door unlocked with a satisfying beep. He smirked. Good, it's open. He pulled the door open and stepped in. Sorry to keep you waiting, Tsudai. But the factory was empty. There wasn't a single soul in sight. No Tsudai. Nothing but discarded equipment and old machinery. Hideki froze in confusion. What is this? There's no one here. While Hideki was momentarily distracted, Tsudai raised his sword and launched a surprise attack from behind. But just as the blade was about to strike, Hideki sensed it. He turned slightly, eyes widening in shock. Yet with his profound strength, he didn't even need to fully turn his head. With just 2 fingers, he caught the glowing blade mid-swing effortlessly. His face darkened, fury rising from betrayal. You really underestimated me, didn't you? He growled, eyes cold. It must be that arrogance, the kind you got from being praised too much, right, Tsudai? Panic flickered in Tsudai's eyes. His carefully laid plan was unraveling before his very eyes. Hideki's rage erupted. His palm began to glow with magical energy as he prepared to retaliate. You actually thought, he snarled, you could bring me down with this. A massive golden chain appeared, snaking through the air like a living creature. It wrapped swiftly around Tsudai, binding him head to toe. Even his mouth was sealed. In seconds he was hoisted upside down, hanging helplessly. Then, with a sneer, Hideki kicked him viciously. You? Be my opponent? Never. Tsudai, still bound, could only let out muffled gasps as he was sent flying across the floor, unable even to scream from the pain. Hideki strode toward him, voice full of disdain. You picked the wrong enemy, you worthless traitor. Tsudai writhed and shook, eyes wide in terror as his former master closed in. You threw away everything for a pathetic dream, Hideki hissed, both fists clenched tightly. You ruined yourself chasing idiotic ambitions, Yoichi Tsudai. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows, still as foolish as ever. Huh? Hideki froze, heart skipping a beat. Someone else had been in the room watching this entire time. And he hadn't noticed. He spun around, startled, voice cracking. Who's there? From the dark, Kyosuke calmly stepped forward. Kneeling before the strong and exploiting the weak, he said coldly, eyeing Hideki with a sarcastic grin. You haven't changed at all. Still greedy and pathetic. Hideki's eyes widened in fury. You dare insult me here? I'm the headmaster of this academy. Still clinging to your authority, I see. Kyosuke replied casually, walking toward him. Crushing others under your power, all for your own ambition. He paused, gaze sharp as a blade. Sounds like a perfect self-introduction, doesn't it, Iwako Hideki? The mention of his full name sent Hideki into a frenzy. His face turned red with rage, veins bulging at his temples. Who the hell are you, you little bastard? Kyosuke strode forward confidently, hands in his pockets, calm as ever. Only now did Hideki realize the boy was wearing a Tokigo student uniform. I'll expel you right now. Hideki bellowed. Give me your student ID. But the more enraged Hideki got, the more amused Kyosuke became. He let out a mocking chuckle. Now calm down, would you? He tilted his head, eyes gleaming. We finally reached this moment, so let's talk a bit, shall we? Just the 2 of us. This was the moment Kyosuke had long awaited. The blood feud that had followed him across lifetimes was about to be settled, one move at a time. Outside, the golden hues of sunset filtered through the trees, bathing everything in a nostalgic glow, a fitting backdrop for settling old scores. Seeing that Hideki was visibly agitated, Kyosuke remained calm and proposed quietly, why don't we just talk for a bit? Iwako Hideki, he called him by name directly, without any honorifics or fear. For someone who held the title of headmaster at a prestigious academy, to be addressed so casually by a mere student was nothing short of outrageous. Hideki ground his teeth in fury. You dare mock me? He growled. His hand began to glow once more, just like when he had attacked Tsudai earlier. The ground around them trembled slightly, and large chunks of earth started to rise, pulled upward by his magic. Hideki clenched his fists. His eyes burned with rage and confidence. I'll show you the difference in power between us, he snarled. Take this advanced earth magic. From the ground, an enormous hand began to rise, crafted from soil and stone, mimicking the shape of his own, but hundreds of times larger. It floated up into the air, then clenched into a colossal fist. His pupils glowed gold, infused with the elemental force he was controlling. The giant fist mirrored his own movements as he wound up to deliver the blow. His lips curled into a sneer. There's no way a mere student like you can dodge this. He thrust his real fist forward with a yell. Die. At his command, the enormous earthen fist launched toward Kyosuke at terrifying speed. But even as the ground quaked and the air howled from the force, Kyosuke stood still calm, unflinching, hands in his pockets watching it approach. A thunderous impact erupted. The earth shattered. Stones flew everywhere. Dust blanketed the area in thick clouds. Hideki threw his head back and laughed triumphantly. This is the price you pay for standing against me, you pathetic little student. Through the haze the factory's silhouette emerged half-collapsed, the ground fractured under the weight of the attack. No sign of Kyosuke remained in sight. With that level of power, no ordinary student could have survived intact, let alone unscathed. Hideki chuckled with pride. Oops, maybe I overdid it, guess I'll need to find a new place to torture him. He shrugged. I still don't even know who you are, but I suppose I'll stick around long enough to watch you die. The earlier explosion had covered his face in dirt, so he reached into his inner pocket to grab a handkerchief. As he wiped the mud from his face, he leisurely made his way toward the wreckage of the factory, muttering in annoyance. What a damn nuisance, but then, he stopped. His eyes widened in disbelief. As the dust finally settled, a single figure stood at the exact spot where the massive blow had landed, completely untouched, as if nothing had ever happened. Kyosuke remained at the center of the destruction, completely unharmed. What? Hideki gasped. Kyosuke began walking toward him, step by step. Though Kyosuke had initially suggested a peaceful conversation, it was Hideki who had struck first without hesitation. Now, with his brows furrowed and his tone calm but stern, Kyosuke asked, I said I just wanted to talk, didn't I? Not a scratch. Not a speck of dust. His uniform remained immaculate. The sight alone sent Hideki reeling. What? You're completely unharmed. Even after taking a direct hit from my advanced spell. No student, no one has ever survived that. He pointed at Kyosuke, his voice rising in disbelief and fury. What the hell are you? Tell me your name now. Kyosuke smiled at the question, rubbing his chin in a taunting manner. Who am I? He echoed. You still don't know who I am. His face darkened slightly, eyes narrowing as he turned the question around. Naturally, the concept of reincarnation was beyond what Hideki would ever consider possible. The headmaster scoffed, irritation flaring. What the hell are you talking about? I don't know any bastard like you. Quit playing games, tell me your name. Kyosuke scratched the back of his neck and let out a small, sly grin. I'm honestly pretty hurt. Ikawo, he said softly. Could it be that you've really forgotten me? That tone. The phrasing, everything about it mirrored someone from Hideki's past. Someone who had once spoken to him the exact same way. His face went pale as a ghost. His jaw trembled. No, it can't be, he stammered. His knees weakened. He turned his face away, unwilling to accept the truth unraveling in front of him. No, impossible, he muttered, holding his head, eyes wide with denial. That man, he was. But then, his eyes lit up, as if a revelation had struck him. The fear on his face twisted into scornful rage. You bastard, he growled. Enough with the cheap act. You must watch the old news reports or read some file, right? His gaze burned with disdain as he pointed a trembling finger at Kyosuke. That man Misato Kyoichiro. He raised his hand, summoning a brilliant turquoise magic. He's dead. Hideki roared. A swirling storm formed around him, whipping up stones and earth into a raging cyclone. The fury in his voice cracked the air like thunder. Kyosuke closed his eyes, taking a calm breath as he looked at his former friend. You've always been like this, he said quietly, stepping forward through the dust. You only believe what's convenient for you and ignore what you don't want to face. Hideki could no longer hide his fear. His heart pounded with panic, though he tried to mask it behind aggression. Shut up, he shouted. Take one more step and I'll destroy you right here. But Kyosuke only smirked. I see now, he began to channel magic, a golden orb slowly forming in his palm as he spoke, its light gradually growing, but Hideki was too distracted by his own fury to notice. You let yourself be swayed by the sweet lies of those around you, Kyosuke accused, his voice firm and steady. And because of that you betrayed me, Misato Kyoichiro, didn't you? His gaze pierced Hideki like a blade, so sharp and unwavering that it cut straight to the man's core. Kyosuke's deepest wound wasn't inflicted by some outsider. It was this, his closest friend's betrayal. Shut your damn mouth. Hideki screamed, his voice cracking. With rage boiling over, he hurled a devastating spell toward Kyosuke. But Kyosuke had been ready for this moment. His eyes gleamed with golden intensity. He lifted his arm, energy swirling around it, and cast his spell. A blinding beam of golden light shot forward, slicing clean through Hideki's turquoise blast. The two spells collided in midair, but Kyosuke's magic overwhelmed his opponents effortlessly. Hideki stared, stunned, as his spell disintegrated, scattered like dust by Kyosuke's attack. It vanished before it could even touch him. His mouth hung open in disbelief. Hideki's eyes went wide in disbelief as he stared at the spell. That magic, he muttered. It was unmistakable. That was the same spell Kyoichiro had used back then years ago, in a memory now too vivid to be a dream. A technique used to annihilate monsters, now cast by the very student standing before him. His own attack had been deflected, redirected toward the ground, detonating nearby in a violent explosion that sent dust and debris billowing into the air. The trees shuddered from the sheer force of the impact. The two men locked eyes, strangers at a glance, yet something deeply familiar lingered in their expressions. A shared past neither could deny. Hideki dropped to his knees. "No, this can't be," he gasped. He shook his head violently, unable to process what he was witnessing. "I'm sure we sealed him away. In the prison, we locked him away." Kyosuke took slow, steady steps toward his fallen former friend. His voice calm, but each word laced with old resentment. "I was imprisoned," he said, "and thrown to the deepest depths of despair." He looked down at Hideki, this man who had once stood beside him, now the very symbol of betrayal. Kyosuke's eyes glinted with the cold flame of vengeance born in a previous life. Hideki's voice trembled. You really are Misato Kyoichiro?" Kyosuke dropped to one knee before him. "Took you long enough," he said, smiling brightly, eerily calm amidst the rising tension. "It's been a while," he added softly. "I'm glad that you still remember me, Iwako." Kneeling on the ground, Hideki stared up, dazed, his voice trembling. You're Misato Kyoichiro?" But in the very next second, he suddenly shot up to his feet with a sharp snap. "Don't take me for a fool," he barked, waving his hand furiously. That would mean he died and came back to this world. Stubbornly clinging to his own reasoning, Hideki refused to accept what was right in front of him. With rage boiling over, he began channeling energy once more. "If you're a ghost, then stay silent like one," he snarled coldly. This time 5 devastating spells launched at once, all barreling toward Kyosuke with deadly intent. Kaishuke, calm as ever, subtly shifted his foot. In one fluid motion, he dodged every single attack effortlessly, hands still tucked neatly in his pockets. He tilted his head upward. A massive earth attribute fist dropped from above, controlled by Hideki, aiming to crush him from above. Kaishuke dodged again with a graceful step, fluid like a dancer. He never broke stride. You insolent little brat," Hideki spat, frustrated. But inside he was scheming. "I have to gain the upper hand," he thought, jaw tightening. "Back in the Golden Seekers, I never fought on the front lines. That's why those smug bastards in the 5 sacred stars still mock me to this day." The sting of humiliation burned inside him. Hideki clenched his fist tighter. "But," he growled to himself, "that doesn't mean I'm weak." With a slight twist of his body like a maestro conducting a symphony, he manipulated the terrain around him. Earth and rock swirled in a storm of motion, his power glowing with a vivid turquoise hue. "This," Hideki declared proudly, "is a spell I spent 20 years perfecting. Wind-Earth Dual Magic Stone Tempest." Dozens upon dozens of rocks, small and massive, were swept up into a violent cyclone and launched like a hailstorm. The air whistled as they sped forth, sharp, deadly, faster than light. "Take this!" Hideki roared, mouth wide open, as he unleashed his most destructive spell. A storm of earth element projectiles hurtled toward the ground where Kyosuke stood, each one glowing with powerful energy. The entire area erupted under the relentless barrage. The force of the impact exploded the earth itself, soil and shattered debris scattering in all directions like a war zone. Having poured everything into that spell, Hideki fell to one knee, panting heavily. But even in his exhaustion he couldn't hide his smug satisfaction. "Well?" he shouted breathlessly. "How's that? That's my strongest spell." He peered into the cloud of smoke and dust, squinting as leaves and ash swirled in the chaos. This time he didn't counterattack, Hideki thought to himself. He's not retaliating. A smirk crept onto his face as hope began to flicker inside him. Hideki's face lit up with glee. A twisted grin spread across his lips. Then, unable to hold back his euphoria, he threw his head back and shouted toward the heavens, "I did it. I actually did it." Fueled by ambition, his features twisted into a grotesque display of greed, malice, and cruelty. With his mouth wide open in triumph, he bellowed, "I defeated that bastard Misato Kyoichiro." He raised his fist into the air, celebrating a long-awaited victory, something he had failed to achieve in the past. Mockingly, he sneered, Did you really think I'd stay the same after all these years, you fool? No matter how powerful your time-based attribute was, that's all in the past now. He narrowed his eyes, voice trembling with long-bottled hatred. Do you even know how many years it's been? 20 years, damn it. The version of me you knew back then, that person no longer exists. To Hideki, finally defeating Kyoichiro meant more than just revenge. It restored his confidence, proved his worth, and gave him something he could boast about for the rest of his life. His pride swelled with each breath. Don't you ever look down on me again, he growled with satisfaction. A crooked smile tugged at his lips. It's only natural. I've grown stronger. My level has gone up over these 20 years. With a long exhale, Hideki relaxed for the first time, soaking in the moment. He thought about the others who used to look down on him. Now that I've finally taken down Kyoichiro, they won't dare act smug around me anymore. The strongest among the 5 sacred stars is me. His mind began to spiral into madness. Every malicious, self-centered thought painted itself across his twisted face. He looked like a man possessed. Then a voice cut through his delusion like a knife. You done? Hideki froze. His face darkened. His pupils contracted in sheer terror. No, it can't be. There stood Kyosuke completely unscathed. Calmly he brushed the dust off his uniform like nothing had happened. Hideki pointed at him, shouting in disbelief, How are you still standing? You took all those attacks, every single one head-on. Kyosuke smiled, almost like he was genuinely impressed. You've learned some impressive magic. Not bad at all. A true hero of this era, huh? At some point, a strange white glow began to shimmer around him. Kyosuke looked straight at Hideki and calmly declared, Now, I don't need to hold back anymore. With a grin so wide his eyes nearly closed, he clenched his fist. His energy surged, radiating in dazzling multicolored sparks, each hue more intense than the last. Hideki's face drained of color. This guy, he's a monster. His heart pounded with panic, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself to focus. No, I can't back down now. Not after everything I've done to get here. Desperate, Hideki summoned more earth magic. I won't let you toy with me any longer. A massive earthen hand formed from Hideki's earth magic shot toward Kyosuke. It clenched shut tightly, trapping Kyosuke in its grip. Hideki smirked, believing he had won. Got him, he muttered confidently. But once again Kyosuke let him down. Oh please, Kyosuke scoffed. You're still barking louder than you bite. He raised a finger, casting a water-based spell that soaked into the earthen hand. Hideki's earth magic, when met with water, turned to nothing more than soft, muddy sludge. The once formidable hand fell apart, crumbling uselessly to the ground. You really thought that would be enough to take me down? Kyosuke taunted. The mud, now shapeless and slick, suddenly reversed direction, surging straight back toward Hideki. No. Stay away from me. Hideki panicked, backing away as he unleashed a wind spell to push the muddy torrent back. But Kyosuke simply waved his hand. A streak of jade-green light sliced through the air. His wind magic, more refined and powerful, collided with Hideki's and devoured it whole. A colossal tornado erupted from Kyosuke's spell, engulfing the battlefield. The wind roared like a beast, pulling everything toward its center. Dust and debris exploded outward in all directions, forcing Hideki to raise his arms to shield his face. The tornado spun faster and faster, creeping closer and closer to him. Hideki, caught in the chaos, was struck by his own redirected magic. He was flung backward, slamming his head into a nearby tree with a painful thud. Damn it! He screamed, writhing from the impact. Then Kyosuke stepped forward, fire blazing in his palm. Hideki's eyes widened in terror. He began crawling backward, scrambling for distance. But the truth was clear now: he had no chance of winning. He dropped to his knees and begged, I'm sorry, Kyoichiro. Please, I'm begging you, spare me. He looked absolutely pathetic, his clothes torn and caked in mud, face swollen and bruised, groveling like a beaten animal. Slamming his forehead against the ground, he cried out, I'm sorry for everything I did 20 years ago. Please, just let me go. Kyosuke stood in silence, lips pressed tightly together. While Hideki kept his face down, a wicked smirk curled on his lips. Kyoichiro's always been a soft-hearted fool. If I beg like this, he'll let me go. A snake never changes its skin. But this time Kyosuke's reply was ice cold. Shut up. Hideki flinched, looking up in shock. Ha! Kyosuke's eyes burned with fury. This is the same pathetic trick you used to trap me back then. And you think I'd fall for it again? A chilling aura radiated from Kyosuke as his face darkened, his rage from 2 decades ago now boiling over. What he had endured, forgiveness wasn't even an option. No, Hideki stammered, staggering to his feet. Wait, Kyoichiro. We were friends, remember? Kyosuke's eyes sharpened like daggers. You don't get to say that. Not after turning me into a monster obsessed with revenge. He clenched his fist. Magic surged violently around him. Then bam, his fist connected squarely with Hideki's face. But he didn't stop there. Bam. Bam. One strike after another, he unleashed every ounce of pain, every scar left behind by betrayal. He pummeled Hideki's body mercilessly, a storm of fists delivering long overdue justice. Blood poured from Hideki's mouth. He couldn't even scream. I shouldn't have, he thought dimly, eyes unfocused. To Hideki, Kyosuke was no longer human, he was a demon, sent to punish him for all the evil he had done. His final thought, you don't mess with this guy. Then came the finishing blow. A massive shockwave burst from Kyosuke's palm, launching Hideki like a missile through the forest. His body tore through tree trunks like paper, crashing violently before falling still. Kyosuke stood before him, looking down with no pity in his eyes. You should be thankful I didn't kill you. There's still one thing I want to ask. But the man before him was no longer responsive. Hideki was unconscious, his body broken, burned by fire and frozen by ice, bruised beyond recognition, mouth foaming from the overwhelming force. Kyosuke stared coldly at the ruined figure before him. But you're not even conscious to hear me, are you? The fading sunlight bathed half of Kyosuke's face in gold. His eyes clear and resolute stared down at the traitor he once called a friend. A piece of the torment he had carried for so long had finally been avenged. Hideki slowly opened his eyes, every inch of his body aching. Pain radiated through his limbs like fire. Above him, Kyosuke looked down with a voice as cold as ice. So you're finally awake. Panic gripped Hideki. He scrambled backward like a startled animal, retreating nearly 100 meters as fear twisted his face into a ghostly pale mask. Please, don't kill me, he cried out, voice trembling. Kyosuke let out a small, almost mocking smile. Oh come on, I'm not going to kill you. He raised his chin slightly, a composed yet unsettling posture that only intensified Hideki's terror. But his golden eyes gleamed menacingly. You will answer my question. Kyosuke calmly reached into his jacket, searching for something. Let's start with this, he said. He pulled out a phone. The screen glowed, displaying a name. Tell me about this woman. Hideki's eyes widened, recognition flashing across his face. He shot to his feet in alarm. That's my phone, he stammered. But Kyosuke didn't care. His gaze remained fixed on the screen. Lei. She called you today. She's the first name on your call history. Kyosuke's face, once calm, darkened with quiet fury. So tell me, what exactly did you two talk about? A bead of sweat trickled down Hideki's cheek. His voice wavered. That, Lei said she'd be coming to Japan in 3 days. I thought she just wanted to discuss that. But Kyosuke's lips curled into a smile, not of warmth, but of understanding. So it was true. The memories of betrayal long buried stirred to the surface once more. 3 days from now, Lei, with his hand loosened, eyes filled with icy certainty. I know what I have to do. Kyosuke casually tossed the phone back. Hideki fumbled to catch it, his hand still trembling. Here, take it. For now, keep treating Lei as you normally would. But then Kyosuke lifted a finger to his lips. However, you will not say a single word to her about who I am. He extended his arm, pointing directly at Hideki. While you were unconscious, I placed a binding curse on your heart. A flicker of flame bloomed in Kyosuke's palm. If you do tell her who I really am, he slowly clenched his fist. The small flame exploded into a massive blast with a deafening boom. Hideki's face went even paler, he looked completely drained of life. His lips trembled, but no words came out. Boom. Kyosuke smirked. Make sure you keep your promise. Then he turned his back and walked away, leaving Hideki to collapse in a heap. Kyosuke's heart brimmed with a quiet satisfaction. He bought it. Completely. There was never a curse. Never any flame-triggered spell. But knowing Iwako Hideki, a threat like that was more than enough. Hideki curled into the dirt, arms wrapped around his head, eyes wild with dread. His lips were pressed tight, trembling. I won't use absolute hypnosis on you, Iwako, Kyosuke thought. Because I want you to feel despair, while fully conscious. A twisted smile of cruel amusement crept across Kyosuke's face. 3 days later. A flight attendant carefully pushed a service cart down the narrow aisle of an airplane cabin. Rusi sat in silence, her gaze thoughtful as she looked out at the hazy view beyond the airplane window. The clouds outside shifted softly like a dream in motion. Just then, The bodyguard walking beside her leaned down and spoke in a low voice. "Miss Lei will be landing soon." A calm announcement from the flight attendant echoed throughout the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our descent shortly." Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, cutting through the calm like a blade. Chaos erupted. A group of armed hijackers had appeared out of nowhere, seizing one of the flight attendants. "This plane's under our control now," one of them barked. Another pointed a gun at the passengers and shouted, "Everybody down. Face the floor." Panic spread like wildfire except for one. Rushi slowly stood, unbothered by the chaos around her. With a composed air, she walked straight toward the gunman, shouting orders. "If you don't do what I say," the man threatened. But before he could finish his sentence, she vanished and reappeared right in front of him. In one swift, devastating strike, she brought him crashing to the floor. The hijacker's eyes went wide in disbelief. He hadn't even seen her move. Within seconds, the rest of the hijackers were all taken down cleanly and efficiently. Not one shot fired from them. The passengers stared, stunned into silence, watching the woman move like a force of nature, calm, commanding, deadly. Then, one voice rose. "It's her. The holy star of the five Li Rushi. We're saved." Someone cried. Cheers broke out in the cabin as the passengers realized who had rescued them. By the time the plane landed, the hijackers were all tied up and ready for arrest. A man in a suit bowed deeply before her, his voice full of gratitude. "Miss Lei, I don't even know how to thank you." Rushi, her youthful face radiant with a gentle smile, replied modestly. "Good thing I happened to be on this flight. Otherwise, your airline might have never recovered from a scandal like this." But then her expression shifted. She turned her head toward her bodyguard, eyeing the gun in his hand. Her tone dropped a few degrees lower, more deliberate. "More importantly," she said, gaze narrowing. She tilted her head slightly, noticing the gun's sleek, untraceable design. "That model isn't picked up by airport scanners, is it?" Her voice sounded almost like a whisper, a veiled negotiation behind a smile. "These days many groups are using materials harvested from dungeon zones." That's why she gently placed a hand on the man's shoulder, voice soft but heavy with implication. "We need to equip our staff with more persuasive tools of self-defense." Her lips curved into a dangerous smile as she added with chilling clarity, "Like the weapon you're carrying right now." The man immediately lowered his head, visibly shaken. "Oh, of course. I'll take care of it right away." Meanwhile, at the airport terminal, dozens of travelers bustled around, moving to catch their connecting flights. Ruxi stepped aside, pressing a phone to her ear and speaking in a low voice, "It's me. Let the hijackers go." Her bodyguard glanced sideways at his mistress, a subtle smile curling on his lips. "Everything went smoothly, didn't it?" Lei Ruxi nodded in agreement, unable to hide the spark of amusement in her eyes. "I must say, that was surprisingly entertaining." Recalling the earlier chaos aboard the flight, her voice lifted with a hint of delight. Planting those hijackers turned out to be the perfect move to seal the deal. She chuckled to herself, savoring the memory of that trembling executive from earlier, all hunched over in reverence. The look on his face, pure desperation. Exactly what she wanted. From outside the airport's waiting area came the sounds of shouting, cheers rising in waves. "Look at that," she said, her eyes gleaming as she glanced toward the terminal window. "This little stunt did wonders for my public image too." The crowd outside roared in awe and admiration. "Lady Lei. It's really her. Lei Ruxi, the hero of the 5 stars." A bright, polished smile, the kind perfected through years of media training, appeared on her face as she waved to the crowd like a benevolent queen. Several luxury cars pulled up in front of a prestigious school. A grand sign above the main gate gleamed in the afternoon sun. Lei stepped out gracefully, her poise unmistakable. "Now then," she murmured, "time to take care of what I really came to Japan for." Her heels clicked softly down the polished hallway. She stopped before a thick wooden door with a golden nameplate, "Principal's office" inside. Iwako Hideki sat motionless at his desk, bandaged and bruised, staring blankly out the window. His face was still a battlefield of swelling and dried blood. Even the softest sound made him flinch now. Then came a calm voice from the door. "Pardon the intrusion, Iwako." Lei Ruxi walked in, smiling as if she were greeting an old friend. She settled into the seat across from him with practiced ease, and asked casually, "So, I heard you were investigating a student with a void attribute. How's that going?" Hideki's eyes flicked toward her, nerves twitching beneath the surface. He carefully chose his words. "It turned out to be a false alarm. Just like you said, that student's nothing but a weakling." Lei sipped her tea delicately, lips curving with feigned sympathy. "I see." Rare attributes mean nothing if the person's still a failure. But for Hideki, every moment was agony. One wrong word. And that curse Kyosuke mentioned might activate. Just stay calm. Say what she wants to hear. Lei set her teacup down gently. Her voice, however, dropped to a chilling seriousness. Let's get to the real reason I'm here. A shadow passed over her face, masking the wicked gleam in her eyes. About that new drug we're developing, it's about time we picked our next test subject, don't you think? She crossed one long leg over the other, her voice smooth with venom. You've gotten pretty good at exploiting the Academy's systems, haven't you? But on a nearby rooftop, a small earpiece crackled quietly in Kyosuke's ear. He was listening to every word coming out of the principal's office. From the shadows his voice emerged low and laced with contempt. Cowards. He stood silently above them, eyes burning cold. The wind tousled his hair as he whispered with absolute resolve, Lei-Rusi, you're next. The television in Kyosuke's room crackled to life. Its screen frozen for a second before the news anchor's voice came through. And now, the latest update. Yesterday, one of the 5 holy stars, Lei-Rushi, officially arrived in Japan. Kyosuke listened in silence, not missing a single word. His expression remained unreadable, distant. The broadcast continued, praising Lei for her heroic efforts in neutralizing a group of plane hijackers. Footage of her smiling gracefully filled the screen. Kyosuke's gaze darkened. Lei-Rusi, one of the people who betrayed me 20 years ago. On screen, she elegantly examined a beautifully crafted hourglass. The report praised her genius in weaponizing dungeon-sourced materials, claiming she'd built an empire off of their trade. But Kyosuke knew better. He recalled what he had overheard earlier. From the conversation with Awako, it was clear she's using this academy to carry out something shady. He stood, grabbing his coat and slipping it on with a quiet resolve. A hero on the surface, but behind the scenes, she exploits others for her own gain. A bitter smile played at his lips. There's no way I'm letting this slide. And with that, he stepped out of his room, moving straight toward his target. The scene shifted to the academy hallway, bustling with morning chatter and laughter. Kyosuke scrolled through his phone while deep in thought. How should I approach this? On his screen, yet another news clip featuring Lei-Rushi. Even from day one, this school's been crawling with security. He frowned slightly, mind racing through possibilities. Then, his eyes sharpened. He had made up his mind. First step, gather intel. Just then, a voice called out from behind him. Kyosuke. He turned, recognizing the cheerful voice immediately. Oh, it's you, Asahi. Karen greeted him with a sweet smile. Good morning. She peeked at his phone and asked with innocent curiosity, were you reading that article about Lady Lei? He glanced at the screen, then replied flatly, yeah, just skimming. Her small face lit up with admiration. She's amazing, isn't she? I mean, she took down those hijackers like it was nothing. She paused before continuing. And the Yamada no Suzuka clan is super famous too. That name caught his attention. Suzuka? Karen nodded eagerly as they walked. It's the clan Lady Lei founded. Super elite. Tons of powerful members. Kyosuke's mind flashed back to those black-clad bodyguards who were always near her. So they're from that clan, Karen went on, eyes sparkling. A lot of students here want to join the military someday. What about you, Kyosuke? He gave a soft laugh, brushing the thought aside. No thanks. But then, something clicked in his mind. He stopped mid-step, his eyes narrowing slightly. Wait, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. If I can use that clan, I might be able to get close to her. With his plan falling into place, his steps grew more confident. All right then. He waved to Karen with a small smile. Thanks, Asahi. Talking to you helped me figure out exactly what to do. She stood motionless at the classroom door, her gaze fixed on Kyosuke's back as he hurried away down the hall. A giant question mark might as well have floated over her head. What was that about? She muttered, puzzled. Elsewhere, inside a luxurious office lined with polished wood and prestigious trophies, Iwako Hideki sat behind his desk. The sudden ring of his landline startled him. Ha! He slowly picked up the receiver. A quiet, almost whisper-like voice came through. It's me. Somewhere under the vast sky, Kyosuke looked up and spoke into his phone. Iwako, I need you to do something for me. There was hesitation on the other end. What is it? Hideki asked nervously. Kyosuke smiled faintly, his voice low and deliberate. If Lei tries to contact you, listen carefully. The scene shifted now inside a cold, clinical research lab. A man knelt on the floor, wrists bound, surrounded by researchers in sterile coats. Suddenly the metal door burst open, letting in a shaft of harsh white light. Lei Rushi entered with the confidence of someone completely in control, hands on her hips, heels clicking across the floor. "Well?" she said with a smirk. "How are you holding up?" The prisoner's eyes went wide in horror. Please don't inject me with that stuff again. I'll die if this keeps up." Her high heel came to a stop directly in front of his trembling face. Then she kicked him flat to the floor without a hint of hesitation. As he shuddered beneath her, she spoke with cold detachment. "You think I care what a lab rat has to say?" Her crimson lips curved into a wicked smile. "Don't be so dramatic." She dragged her heel across his cheek, watching his eyes shrink in terror. "If your body's compatible with this drug, you'll become something far stronger than you are now." With a flick of her wrist, she turned and gave a sharp snap of her fingers. "Begin." A nearby technician raised a syringe filled with glowing red liquid. The man screamed. "No, wait. Please, But the needle had already pierced his neck. His body froze. His scream died mid-breath, then erupted again, this time as an agonized howl of inhuman pain. He convulsed. Thrashed. Until finally he collapsed, twitching. His face went slack, eyes glassy. When he opened his mouth, nothing came out but garbled sounds, no words, no thoughts. Lei watched calmly, then sighed in disappointment. Lost linguistic ability again. She tapped her finger against her chin. Looks like without even basic magical aptitude, the drug's useless. The door opened again with a soft hiss. Her head bodyguard stepped forward, reporting in a measured tone. "We'll be needing more test subjects soon." Lei crossed her arms, nodding. "Agreed." A dark smile crept back onto her face as she began typing furiously into her tablet. "As usual, we'll disguise the operation as a recruitment campaign." She strode confidently into the elevator, pulling out her phone and dialing. "Hello, Iwako?" Leaning her graceful form against the side of the elevator, she spoke sweetly. "About those test subjects we discussed." Her voice dipped into a tone of casual authority. "I need individuals with strong magical potential. Can your academy spare a few?" On the other end, Hideki was silent for a moment, then spoke. "In that case, how about this?" She raised an eyebrow, listening. "We can host a selection event right at the academy," Hideki suggested. "That way, we'll easily identify the strongest candidates." Lei's lips curled with satisfaction. "Perfect." A sly smile curled at the corner of her lips, one she didn't bother to hide. That wicked glint in her eyes made her intentions clear. "Sometimes, that man does come up with decent ideas," she muttered to herself, amused. With a soft ding, the elevator chimed once again. "Ground floor," it announced. Lei Rushi stepped out with poise, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Her mood was unusually light, her steps almost floating. "The exact time and details will be announced later," she whispered to herself with satisfaction. On the other end of the line, Iwako Hideki had already hung up. He stood silently at the window of his office, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the fading sky beyond the glass. "I've done what you asked, Kyoichiro." The scene transitioned. Inside the academy's grand assembly hall, hundreds of students had gathered. The air was buzzing with curiosity and anticipation. A sharply dressed man, one of Lei's personal guards, stood on the main stage. His voice rang out with calm authority. "The Yamata no Suzuka clan has officially decided to hold a recruitment examination." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. "Is this real? That's the clan Lady Lei founded. This could be our chance to join her ranks." Whispers turned to excitement as students leaned in, eager for more details. Among the crowd stood Kyosuke. He didn't join in the chatter. Instead, he simply smiled to himself, quiet, calculating. His eyes locked onto the man on stage, sharp and focused. So the path to Lei Rushi is finally open. It was a bright morning, and the academy's open-air sports field had been transformed into the site of a massive examination. Students filled the grounds, buzzing with anticipation. The judges stood in front, watching over them with measured eyes. One of the examiners, a man with long hair and an air of authority, stepped forward. "Thank you all for coming to participate in the Yamata no Suzuka clan's selection exam," he announced. He began explaining the rules. "I'll now explain how this test will work." While the examiner laid out the procedure, Kyosuke stood in silence near the edge of the field, lost in thought. "If I want to infiltrate the Yamata no Suzuka clan and get close to Lei," he thought, "I'll have to pass this exam. Back when I met with Iwako, I did my best to stay unnoticed, but this time is different." His eyes narrowed with purpose. "This time I want to be seen. I need to draw attention from Yang Xinyu Lei's right hand, and from the other examiners too. I'll have to put my full power on display." As he stood deep in contemplation near the hallway, A familiar voice broke through. Kyosuke. He turned. It was Karin, walking up to him with a small wave. You're taking the exam too? She asked. He gave her a slight nod. Yeah, you too? His eyes flickered with concern. I didn't want her getting involved in any of this, he thought. But still. Karin offered him a shy smile, cutting off his train of thought. I know I don't really belong here, she admitted, her voice gentle but steady. But I have my own reasons for being here. Then she looked up at him with a smile full of resolve. Let's give it our all, okay? Let's both pass this. Kyosuke looked away slightly, a determined glint in his eye. No matter what, I have to make it through. Back on the field, the long-haired examiner raised his voice again. We will now begin the mana measurement portion of the test. He gestured toward a glowing yellow orb resting on a pedestal. This device will read and display the mana level of anyone who touches it. Please step forward one at a time. The first student approached and placed his hand on the orb. A faint glow appeared, followed by a disappointed sigh from the examiners. Then the next name was called. Asai Kyosuke stepped forward. Kyosuke walked up calmly, offering a polite smile. Thank you. He held up his student ID for inspection. The examiner glanced at it and instantly lost interest. Void attribute, level 30? Not worth getting our hopes up, he muttered. Kyosuke stepped up to the device and laid his hand on the orb. For a moment nothing happened. Then a blinding flash of golden light burst from the orb, flooding the entire area with overwhelming brilliance. Gasps echoed across the field. The examiner flinched, shielding his eyes. What the? Even the students nearby were stunned. What the hell was that? That's insane. As the light faded, everyone turned to the source. Kyosuke still stood there, perfectly calm, his hand resting on the device like nothing had happened. All eyes were on him now. Kyosuke turned his head slightly and asked with a confident smirk, So, are we done here? The examiner, still processing what had just happened, stammered. Huh. Oh, yeah, without waiting for a real response. Kyosuke casually turned and walked away. Behind him, the examiner scrambled to record the results. Among all the mana readings taken so far, only Kyosuke had reached rank S. The next part of the evaluation was the magic skill demonstration. Kyosuke stepped forward and calmly began forming a spell. A small orb of earth floated above his palm. One of the judges, watching from behind, scoffed. What, that's it? Just a dirt clump. High mana means nothing without control. But then, the corner of Kyosuke's mouth lifted into a sly, knowing grin. Suddenly a water orb shimmered into existence in his other hand. The examiners froze, stunned. He was maintaining two different elemental spells at once. Before anyone could react, a fire orb ignited in his third hand gesture. And then, two more. By the end, Kyosuke was effortlessly balancing 5 separate orbs, each representing a different elemental affinity. The crowd watching from a distance gasped in shock. One man muttered in disbelief, he's manifesting all 5 basic attributes at the same time. Kyosuke smirked proudly. Well, surprised? Huh. A void-type caster considered trash by most of you, and yet here I am doing this. How's that for worthless? From the crowd, Karen came running up, her face lit up with excitement. Kyosuke. That was amazing. Kyosuke smiled and gave her a nod. Thanks. Do your best too, Asahi. Now it was Karin's turn. She stepped up to the testing area, gathered her mana, and placed her hands over a planter box filled with wilted plants. Slowly, the lifeless stems began to stir. They straightened. Buds formed. Moments later, full, vibrant flowers bloomed where dry husks once stood. The entire planter box looked like a miniature spring garden. But instead of being impressed, 2 nearby students chuckled. Seriously? Reviving flowers? That's her big skill. Only Kyosuke truly noticed what was happening. Light attribute, that's a rare one. But the judges probably won't recognize it. I feel bad for her. She shouldn't get caught up in this mess. Feeling embarrassed from the mockery, Karen quietly lowered her head and walked away. But she had caught someone's eye. The long-haired examiner from earlier typed something discreetly into his phone. Asahi Karin, potential subject for testing. Then came the final stage of the entrance exam. The examiner returned to center stage and announced, and now we begin the last trial, live combat. He pointed to a group standing behind him. Your opponents are members of the Orochi school. The students murmured in shock. Wait, he wants us to fight them. Members of the Great Serpent clan. The examiner raised a hand to calm them. Don't worry. You won't be judged solely on winning or losing. What matters most is how you fight. But in his mind, he sneered. As if any of you academy brats could actually beat someone from the Orochi. A cocky blonde fighter from the opposing school stepped forward and pointed at Kyosuke. So, you're the loudmouth rookie causing all the commotion during the entrance exams? He cracked his knuckles with a smirk, muscles tensing as he prepared for the fight. Looks like you made quite an impression during the earlier tests. But let me show you none of that matters once you step onto the battlefield. But under that pressure, Kyosuke simply smiled politely. I see. Then I hope I can learn a lot from you. The blonde sneered. I'll end this in one move. With that, he summoned his earth magic, forming multiple dense rock orbs that hovered in the air. In an instant, dozens of them launched straight at Kyosuke. But Kyosuke didn't flinch. With a calm breath, he lifted his hand and cast his own spell. A sudden surge of energy intercepted the incoming attack, and in a blink reversed it. The earth projectiles were deflected right back toward their caster. Boom! The blonde fighter was thrown off balance by his own magic. What the he neutralized my spell in one move. He shouted, teeth clenched. He looked up, scanning the area. Kyosuke was gone. Where did he before he could finish? Kyosuke appeared right behind him, a blade of shimmering ice magic pressed gently to his throat. Leaning in with a calm smile, Kyosuke whispered, you call exposing yourself with a single flashy move real combat? Thanks. I learned a lot. The match was over before it even began. A judge's voice echoed across the arena, winner Asai Kyosuke. In the crowd, the long-haired male examiner's eyes widened in disbelief. He beat one of the Orochi. Who is this kid? That night, as the city lights blinked to life, Rusine sat in her office reviewing the final reports. Over the speaker, the examiner's voice reported, Lei, the entrance exam is complete. She leaned forward slightly. Did you find anyone interesting? The voice hesitated, then replied yes. One student stood out. Dominated every section of the test. But, she pressed. He appears to be a void-type mage. Rusine raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Void-type. Could this be the student Iwako's been investigating? She sat up, then let out a soft chuckle. Ha ha ha. Her eyes lit up with a dangerous glint. Looks like I've found myself a very interesting little lab rat. Inside the auditorium, the long-haired examiner stood at the podium, his voice calm but commanding. I will now announce the names of those who passed the entrance examination. He paused, eyes sharp and serious as he scanned the room. Then, with a firm tone, he declared, Asai Kyosuke. A wave of chatter immediately rippled through the crowd. Of course he passed. That guy crushed the exam like it was nothing. Kyosuke simply smiled with quiet satisfaction. Everything is going according to plan. Now I can finally get close to Lei. The examiner continued, next, Asahi Karen. Karen lit up with joy, responding cheerfully, yes. Kyosuke turned toward her in surprise. She made it too, he thought. I didn't expect that just having a rare element would be enough to pass. Something didn't feel right. Is Lei using these students for something else? There must be a reason they brought Asahi in. Still, Karen looked genuinely happy, beaming at her achievement. Kyosuke forced a smile back, but beneath it, he let out a small sigh. He looked at her thoughtfully. No matter what, I won't let them lay a hand on her. I'll complete my mission, and I'll protect her. A few days later at the Orochi headquarters, Japan branch, a towering glass building gleamed under the morning sun. Inside, in a sleek underground meeting room, the long-haired examiner welcomed the group of successful applicants. Congratulations. All of you have passed the selection exam. He stepped forward and began explaining their schedule. Today we'll conduct a compatibility assessment before officially welcoming you into the Orochi school. Also, he paused with a subtle smirk. Lei Rusi will be joining us. She'll meet with you after the testing concludes. Hearing that name, Kyosuke's eyes darkened, his aura shifted, sharp and dangerous. He said nothing, but tension radiated from him like heat. The examiner gestured toward a corridor. Follow me. Kyosuke and Karen moved along with the group. Karen, meanwhile, looked around wide-eyed with curiosity. Wow, this place is huge. It's kinda nerve-wracking but exciting too. Kyosuke nodded. Yeah. She turned to him with a bright smile. But honestly, I'm just really happy I get to join the Orochi school. Kyosuke looked at her with genuine curiosity. Can I ask, why do you want to join this place? Karen scratched her cheek, a little shy. Well, my mom's in the hospital. The treatment's expensive. This school offers full support for family members. Kyosuke's expression softened. I see. So it wasn't because of me. She has her own reasons. His resolve hardened even more. All the more reason I need to protect her. The group eventually stopped in front of a large door leading underground. The examiner turned. We're here. Kyosuke blinked. The basement. They descended the stairs and arrived at a large underground hall filled with strange devices and glowing orbs. Kyosuke scanned the area carefully, testing equipment. That means they're planning something. The long-haired examiner suddenly gave the order, shut the doors. Bang. The heavy doors slammed shut, causing everyone in the room to freeze in confusion. Kyosuke raised an eyebrow, casually commenting. Not planning on letting anyone out? Huh? These guys sure take their work seriously. Two students stepped forward, visibly agitated. Hey, what's the meaning of this? You can't just lock us in. But the examiner dropped his calm facade, his face twisting into something sinister as he barked, silence. The tone of his voice alone was enough to make the two students step back, trembling. He straightened his coat and spoke in a cold, clinical voice. As I mentioned earlier, we'll now begin the compatibility assessment. Specifically, he pointed to a machine nearby and continued. We'll be testing your compatibility with a new experimental drug currently in secret development. He gestured to a vial filled with a glowing liquid. This drug is formulated using ingredients gathered from dungeons. It's designed to dramatically boost physical and magical abilities. The red-haired student stuttered. What did you just say? The blue-haired one chuckled. Isn't that a good thing? Kyosuke narrowed his eyes. Does this drug have any side effects? The examiner smirked and pointed toward a large screen. It'll be faster if I show you. On the screen, a male student was bound to a chair, thrashing in panic. Please stop. I am not. But the injection went in anyway. Seconds later, the boy went limp, unconscious. Drool spilled uncontrollably from his mouth. Gasps and horrified murmurs echoed through the room. What the hell is this? The blue-haired student shouted. The examiner remained unmoved. What you just witnessed was a subject incompatible with the formula. That should answer your question. You've got to be kidding. One of them roared. There's no way we're letting you inject that into us. The two students immediately summoned their magic and lunged toward the examiner. Let us out of here now. Meanwhile, Kyosuke turned to Karen and calmly instructed Asahi. Stay close to me. The examiner clenched his fist. In one smooth motion, he struck both rebellious students and dropped them in an instant. They hit the ground hard, completely unconscious. Dusting off his coat, the examiner looked down at them with annoyance. Tech, just great. That's 2 less test subjects. Then his gaze shifted across the room and locked onto Karen. Let's start with the girl over there. He retrieved a syringe and prepped the drug. A light element user? Huh? I'm very curious about how you'll react to this. Step by step he moved toward her. Karen froze, fear filling her eyes. But before the syringe could reach her, Kyosuke stepped in between them, his face unreadable, but his presence radiating pure warning. The examiner frowned. What are you doing? Kyosuke stared straight at him. Stopping a pathetic coward like you from laying a finger on her. The examiner grit his teeth in fury. You little, he snapped his fingers. Hold him down. A massive enforcer lunged at Kyosuke. But Kyosuke was already gone. In a blur he dodged the blow and, with one swift motion, brought the man crashing to the floor. What? A student shouted. Before anyone could react, Kyosuke flashed across the room like a storm, striking down the next 2 attackers in rapid succession. The big guys crumpled to the ground, writhing in pain. The examiner stood frozen, mouth slightly open. No way, he dropped all of them in one hit. After dealing with the rest of the goons, Kyosuke turned around slowly. His eyes locked onto the long-haired examiner with a piercing glare, and he said coldly, "You're next." The sheer pressure from Kyosuke's presence made the examiner freeze in place. His body stiffened involuntarily, a chill running down his spine. Realizing the tables had turned, the examiner clenched his jaw. Tech, if it's come to this, a desperate idea flashed through his mind. If I can just grab that girl without warning, he lunged toward Karen. No, she screamed in panic. But Kyosuke was faster. He caught the examiner's wrist mid-air, his grip iron tight. I told you, he growled. I won't let you get anywhere near her. The examiner cursed under his breath and yanked his hand back. Damn it, he stumbled back, shaken. Who is this guy? A normal student shouldn't have this kind of power. Kyosuke's eyes darkened, his tone dropping lower. Now then, he stepped forward slowly, his presence suffocating. Get ready. I'm done playing nice. At that moment, Kyosuke stood tall like a true hero, shielding Karen behind him. The long-haired man grit his teeth in rage. Damn you, Kyosuke didn't budge. Asahi. Stay behind me. Karen, still trembling with fear, nodded. Thank you, Kyosuke. She looked at him with awe. Kyosuke's amazing. I couldn't even follow his movements earlier. I knew he had grown stronger, but not this strong. The examiner finally regained his composure and barked, "Don't get cocky, you little brat." But Kyosuke stood his ground and said coolly, "Let me ask you something." His eyes sharpened, voice low and dangerous. "Why are students from the academy being used as test subjects?" The examiner's lips curled into a twisted grin. "Simple," he sneered. "Those who serve Lady Lei are blessed by her. Once this drug is perfected, she'll become even stronger." Kyosuke scowled. "And you think it's acceptable to run inhumane experiments on people for that?" But the man only shrugged. "We're just making use of what's available. That's all." Then he chuckled, his voice sickeningly casual. "In fact, being part of our experiment should be an honor for them." Kyosuke's hand clenched into a fist. He remembered Karin's words from earlier, "My mom's in the hospital, and the treatment is expensive. I was really happy to get accepted into the Daijia Mount Academy." Hearing those words echo in his head made his blood boil. The examiner pointed at Karin mockingly. "That girl too, she was overjoyed to be chosen. How pitiful." "Shut up." Kyosuke's voice sliced through the room like a blade. A surge of raw magical energy exploded from his body, sending a wave of pressure crashing through the space. Even the examiner flinched, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Kyosuke stepped forward slowly, fury radiating from every pore. "Who do you think you are? Trash like you who tramples on others will never understand how Asahi feels." Karin looked at him, eyes wide and shining. "Kyosuke," the examiner's eyes narrowed, unease creeping in. "What is this insane pressure? He's just a student." Still, he smirked arrogantly and replied, "Normally I'd put someone like you back in their place. But I'll admit, I kinda like that attitude of yours." He extended an offer with mock sincerity. "Why don't you join us, huh? Swear loyalty to Lady Lei. Hand over the girl, and I'll recommend you as a high-ranking officer. I'm sure Lady Lei would be very pleased." Kyosuke's eyes darkened with disgust. "I already told you to shut up. There's no forgiving scum like you." The examiner loosened his tie and growled, "You'll regret this." Then, with a sharp glow, his eyes lit up bright gold. The very ground beneath him cracked and crumbled as magical energy surged around him. Kyosuke's gaze tightened. "Body enhancement magic." The man cracked his knuckles confidently. "That's right. Combined with my martial arts, this is my unbeatable technique." The examiner sneered and raised his fist. "Come on, tough guy, try me." His feet pushed off the ground hard as he lunged toward Kyosuke with frightening speed. "Take this," he roared, throwing a heavy punch. But the moment his fist came down, it hit nothing but air. His expression shifted into stunned confusion. "What the?" He dodged it. Kyosuke stood there calmly, a confident look on his face. "So that's what physical enhancement magic feels like, I see. It's impressive." The examiner gritted his teeth and charged again. "Then let's see you dodge this." As he hurled another powerful punch, Kyosuke calmly closed his eyes. He focused, visualized, created the form in his mind. The examiner scoffed. "What the hell are you doing? Giving up already?" His fist drew closer, closing the distance in a flash. "Just die already." Kyosuke's eyes snapped open. Void magic manifest. His palm raised, stopping the punch mid-air. The long-haired man gasped. "What?" He blocked it. "No way, he's matching my strength. No, he's overpowering me." Kyosuke gave him a sharp smile. "Looks like I can use enhancement magic too now. Thanks for the inspiration. It really helped me picture it clearly." And with that, Kyosuke delivered a crushing blow straight to the man's gut. Boom! The force sent the examiner flying backward, smashing into the ground. Debris exploded in every direction. Lying in the rubble, the examiner groaned in disbelief. "No, this can't be." A thought echoed in his fading consciousness. Who the hell is he? Kyosuke didn't move. He simply stood there, eyes cold, gaze sharp with a mixture of hatred and disdain. Karin rushed over, breathless. "Thank you, Kyosuke." He turned to her gently. "You okay, Asahi?" She nodded, still shaken. Then, looking to the rest of the students, Kyosuke said firmly, "I'll clear the way. You all need to get out of here." The two other boys hesitated. "But what about you?" Kyosuke didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand and shattered the massive glass wall in a single blast. As dust and light poured in from the opening, Kyosuke stepped through with steady determination. He didn't look back. He only left them with one sentence: "I have unfinished business." Elsewhere, a phone rang urgently. A man's voice came through, clearly panicked. "Lady Lei. We have a situation, urgent." Rushi sat up sharply. "What happened?" "Master Yang has been defeated. The students have escaped." Her eyes widened. "What?" The voice continued, trembling. "Worse. There's someone unbelievably powerful heading your way. Boom. A thunderous crash cut off the call. Ruchi froze, startled. What the hell was that? The camera panned to the doorway where Kyosuke now stood in the shadows, the light behind him casting a long, ominous silhouette. Ruku tensed, immediately on guard. Who are you? What are you doing here? Kyosuke stepped forward slowly. His voice was calm, deadly. It's simple. His eyes sharpened into pure hatred. I've come to settle a score, from 20 years ago. Rusi couldn't quite grasp what Kyosuke had just said. A debt, from 20 years ago. What nonsense are you talking about? Kyosuke took a calm step forward, voice cold yet composed. Oh, still not getting it. Do I need to spell it out for you? His eyes narrowed, sharp with accusation. 20 years ago, after the collapse of that SSS rank dungeon, your so-called Pentagon Saints were paraded around like heroes. Rusi's expression stiffened the moment he mentioned the past. Kyosuke continued, voice cutting like a blade. Let's assume the villain behind it all was defeated that day. Ruhu turned her face away and feigned indifference. A mere student wants to lecture me on history now. How cute. But Kyosuke wasn't fazed. He went on, relentless. Now, each of the 5 saints your precious elite holds power at the very top of the world. You're all praised as saviors, champions of justice. Rusi rolled her eyes and interrupted. Get to the point already, but Kyosuke cut her off, voice stern. But the truth is far uglier. Rusi's smile twitched. What did you just say? Kyosuke's aura shifted. The air grew heavy. You used your own comrades as sacrifices. You claimed the rewards while they were left to die. And even now, you trample over the legacy of the people who once fought by your side. Tell me, am I wrong? Rusi laughed, trying to mask her growing unease. So that's what this is about. Some pathetic conspiracy theory. Don't tell me you actually believe that garbage, but Kyosuke stood firm, tone unwavering. It's not a theory. I know what you did. His eyes bore into her. You were the one who pushed your teammate into that gate that day. Ruki flinched. Her confident mask cracked for the first time, her voice trembling. How? How could you possibly know that? Kyosuke saw the fear flicker in her expression. He leaned forward, voice low. Still don't get it, Ray. His tone grew sharp like a dagger sliding into her chest. Do you really not recognize me? Then, without hesitation, I am Misato Kyoichiro. Rushi gasped. No, that's impossible. But Kyosuke cut in, his voice thunderous. It already happened. I've reclaimed the very power that once made you call me a monster. A level 100 mage capable of using time magic. Yeah, I'd say monster fits. Every word shattered Rusi's composure. She stared at him in disbelief, shaken to her core. No, you're supposed to be dead, but Kyosuke ignored her desperation. I also know what your precious Ray Corporation has been doing in the shadows. If I expose it, your reputation will crumble overnight. Rusi's fear turned to fury. She swung her arm, screaming, Don't you dare mess with me. Kyosuke continued walking forward, slow and steady, his voice calm but ice cold. Don't joke with me. That's my line. His gaze locked on Rushi like a blade. Because of what you did 20 years ago, because you crushed the hope of a girl who gave everything she had, I'll never forgive you. Ruhusi didn't flinch at the threat. Instead, she smirked. Lifting her chin defiantly, she snapped, Don't overestimate yourself. You're not even in Misato's original body anymore. Her grip tightened around a long, elegant staff now glowing with magical energy. But here you are, standing in front of me like an idiot. I'll make sure you regret that. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed a violent surge of magic. The sheer force of it cracked the walls and floor of the room. But Kyosuke dodged effortlessly. Rusi swung her staff again, proud and arrogant. See this? This is the power of Ray Corporation's finest weapon. Forged with materials straight from the dungeon, stronger than any known metal. Let me show you just how sharp it really is. She leapt high into the air, bringing her weapon down in a flurry of rapid strikes. But no matter how fast or fierce her attacks, Kyosuke evaded every single one. A powerful swing aimed directly at his face cut through empty space. She growled in frustration. Tech, is dodging the only thing you know how to do? But then she paused. Her brows furrowed. Something felt wrong. Why hasn't even one of these attacks landed? Kyosuke's voice rang out coolly amidst the chaos. Ah, I see it now. He dodged another blow as if it were nothing. You've been playing CEO for too long, haven't you? Your technique's gotten sloppy. His eyes sharpened, piercing. You're no better than Iwako now. Rushi's face twisted in rage, veins bulging as fury overtook her. You bastard. She lunged again with all her strength. Thud. The staff went straight through Kyosuke's torso. Rusi's eyes widened, then lit up in triumph. I got him. I finally hit him. But just as a smirk crept onto her lips, too bad. Kyosuke's voice echoed right behind her. Her pupils shrank. She looked back and realized it had only been an illusion. Kyosuke had suddenly appeared right behind her, completely unharmed. Rusi froze in place, body stiff, eyes wide. What? How then? She clenched her teeth, realization hitting her like a bolt. That's void magic? I've never heard of it being this effective. Her hands tightened around her weapon. If that was true, then she had no choice. A faint shimmer of fire began to glow at her fingertips as she channeled magic into her spear. Her eyes lit up with fury. This next strike will shut that mouth of yours forever. A burning flame roared to life, wild, untamed, destructive. Ruchi let out a war cry as she charged, the fire growing into an inferno behind her. Her spear, now blazing with intense heat, hurtled straight toward Kyosuke's chest. But with effortless calm, Kyosuke raised two fingers. Clink. He caught the blazing spearhead between them, halting it completely. Rushi gasped. Impossible. Kyosuke's gaze darkened. So that's your full power? He scoffed. You're even weaker than you were 20 years ago. Her pride shattered by those words, Rusi's face twisted. Tech, if that's how it is, then I have no choice but to use that. She suddenly leapt back and pulled something from within her coat. Kyosuke's eyes narrowed. Wait, what are you? His voice cut off when he saw it. A red syringe glowing faintly. Without hesitation, Rusi plunged the needle into her arm. No, Kyosuke shouted. It was too late. A violent pulse of purple magic erupted from her body, surrounding her in a sinister aura. Kyosuke's expression hardened as the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He muttered, "You're really going to go that far?" Rusi's entire form began to change, veins glowing, her skin tightening with power. Her eyes burned with killing intent as her voice came out warped and menacing. "Monster, you're not the only one who can become one." Not long after, the violet aura around her slowly dissipated, revealing Ruxi's body, now completely transformed into a half-monster state. When the transformation finished, she let out a contemptuous chuckle and taunted, "Ha, now you will never be able to defeat me," but the protagonist remained calm. Replying coolly, "On the contrary. You really think you can win just by relying on enhancement drugs? Do you honestly believe it is that simple?" Ruxi's smirk did not fade. Her tone dripped with scorn as she snapped back, "Don't underestimate me. Do you have any idea how much time and money I have poured into this serum? I gathered materials hidden deep within dungeons and spent years developing it. Ever since I witnessed that overwhelming power 20 years ago, I have been searching for a way to reach that level myself. And now, I have finally attained a strength that surpasses everything. In fact, I should be thanking you for that, Kyoichiro." From Kyosuke's perspective, he could no longer stomach listening to this venomous woman gloat. Cutting her off mid-speech, he sneered, "What? Pathetic, you call this surpassing everything? You are bragging about a power that comes from a bottle." His face hardened, his words sharp and accusatory. Ruxi froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard, and demanded, "What did you just say to me?" But before she could finish, the protagonist stepped forward. Assuming a fighting stance, "Sorry to interrupt your monologue, but it is time I ended this once and for all." At once, both of Kyosuke's hands ignited with blazing golden flames. On the other side, Ruxi's killing intent flared as she prepared to send him straight to hell. She spread her arms and entered her own stance. "Fine then, let us settle this. We will see who the true superior is." The moment her words left her mouth, she launched herself forward like a violent gust of wind, closing the distance instantly. Yet Kyosuke simply tilted his body to the side, effortlessly dodging her strike. The wall behind him was not so lucky. Ruxi's attack smashed into it with brutal force, reducing it to rubble that scattered in every direction. She spun around and jeered, "Well, do you see it now? This is the fruit of my research. And I will send you to your grave once again." With a feral snarl, she lunged again, moving at terrifying speed that even made Kyosuke's heart jolt. Before he could mount a defense, her massive hand slammed square into his chest, the sheer impact blasting him backward like a fired cannonball. Seeing her attack land, Ruxi's lips curled into a triumphant smile as a thought echoed in her mind, "I have won." But her victory was short-lived. A sharp, searing pain suddenly shot up from her leg, forcing her eyes downward. To her shock, a jagged spike of ice had pierced clean through her left foot. The agony was so intense it shot straight to her brain, and her small, twisted body collapsed to one knee against the shattered floor. Meanwhile, Kaisuke remained composed. With his hands casually tucked into his pockets, he walked up to Ruxi and said calmly, "I planted that trap the moment you launched your attack." His meticulous preparation sent Ruxi into a panic. Sweat streamed down her face as she stammered, "How could you possibly?" Kaisuke cut her off. Speaking with unhurried clarity, "Thanks to your lackeys who used it before you, I was able to observe how you employed your body enhancement magic. Your blessing is impressive, I will admit, but in the end all it does is let you stir up a bit of wind." His dismissive tone made Ruxi bite down hard on her lip, fury blazing in her eyes. "You dare mock the fruits of my research," she snarled. But before she could say another word, Kaisuke's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare twist the truth. You trampled over others and now you call that progress. You disgust me." The more he spoke, the more his expression hardened with anger, his eyes glinting with murderous intent. That look alone sent alarms blaring inside Ruxi's mind. With no other choice, she gathered power into her palm, ignoring the searing pain in her injured foot, and charged at him recklessly. Her voice rose in a shrill, desperate cry, "Shut up!" Unfortunately for her, Kaisuke hardly needed to exert himself. As she lunged, he simply reached out, seized her wrist in an iron grip, and with his other hand delivered a crushing punch to her stomach. The blow was so devastating that Ruxi coughed up blood on the spot, her body folding under the impact. Shock and disbelief filled her mind as she choked out silently. "My power. It is useless, so this is the strength Kyoichiro has now." Before she could muster another move, she collapsed to the ground, broken and defeated, like a mangy dog left for dead. Kaisuke, having put an end to his old enemy, turned away without hesitation. His voice was cold as he muttered, "Lay, from the very beginning. This was never real strength." With that, he strode out of the ruined building. The moment he stepped outside, a familiar voice called out behind him. Turning, Kaisuke saw none other than his friend Asahi. "Oh, Asahi, you are all right?" he asked, smiling faintly. "I am glad you made it through unharmed." At the same time, not far from them, a cluster of reporters had gathered, stirred into excitement by the explosion. "Hey, it is just like the tip said. Lei Corporation has been attacked," they shouted among themselves. Their words made Asahi turn toward Kaisuke with suspicion. "Was that your doing?" she asked cautiously. Naturally, Kaisuke had to play dumb. With a shrug, he answered, "Who knows?" Then, falling silent, he sank into thought. At last, the truth about Lei's crimes has been exposed. The test subjects are safe, and Lei has lost everything. Switching to Asahi's point of view, she noticed the distant, brooding look on Kaisuke's face and spoke with concern. "Hey, Kaisuke, I still do not fully understand what just happened. But if you had not been there, I doubt I would even be standing here right now. So, thank you, really." Her words caught him off guard for a moment. But then he gave a faint, almost wistful smile, reminding himself, "That is right. I nearly forgot. Helping others used to be the very reason I lived." Time passed quickly, and by that evening the news of the attack on Lei Corporation had spread everywhere. The voice of a female news anchor echoed from the television. "We have just received reports that illegal human experimentation was being conducted in a secret underground laboratory owned by Lei. Ruxi, one of the 5 sacred stars, was exposed after the facility was attacked by an unknown assailant. This genius now shows signs of memory loss, while the identity of the attacker remains a mystery." Back with Kaisuke, listening to the broadcast stirred a flicker of curiosity within him. "I wonder how the rest of them will respond." Then, suddenly, the anchor's tone grew urgent. We interrupt this program with breaking news. Nathaniel, one of the 5 sacred stars, has just issued an official statement." The words made Kaisuke's expression darken, his gaze sharpening with lethal intent. On the screen, a blond man began to speak. "On behalf of the 5 sacred stars, I stand here to deliver an urgent message. I can only say that we are deeply grieved by the events involving Lei. Ruxi was our comrade. We feel profound sorrow that we did not recognize her fall sooner." He spoke with practiced sorrow, as though mourning, but Kaisuke's eyes pierced through the act. To him, it was nothing but hollow theater. In fact, the display only fueled his irritation. Didn't recognize it, so once again, the 5 sacred stars pretend they knew nothing. Just like they did 20 years ago. They have not changed a bit, lying without blinking, willing to do anything to protect their lofty image as heroes. To them, people like me and Asahi are not even worth being called hopes. We are just stepping stones. Nathaniel Cavell, judging by his actions back then, he was likely the one pulling the strings behind my exile. Not surprising. He has always been calculating, cautious with every move. And now, no one even knows where he is hiding. Kaisuke steadied himself, exhaled slowly, and pulled out his phone, as though preparing to contact someone. Elsewhere, in an unfamiliar church, a young woman knelt before an altar, deep in prayer. Behind her, a stranger approached and reported, "That is what he said." "Lady Claudia." Without turning, Claudia answered coldly, "I see. Understood. Leave." She clasped her hands tighter and resumed her prayer. "O Lord, guide us toward a future filled with light." The scene shifted to a training hall, where a man named Ingolf was in the middle of lifting weights. A subordinate hurried over to remind him. "Lord Ingolf, the council meeting is about to begin." With a growl, Ingolf tossed the weight aside, his voice laced with anger. "I know. I will be there soon." "Lay, that mutt. What the hell was she thinking?" His tone dripped with rage. Not long after, the secret council of the 5 sacred stars convened. Naturally, the one presiding over it was none other than Nathaniel himself. Once he confirmed that everyone was present, he spoke in a commanding voice, "All right, everyone, let us begin the council meeting of the 5 sacred stars." On the television screen, Claudia remained in her prayerful posture as she spoke with disdain. "So, the attacker has exposed Lay's illegal experiments. How disgraceful." From another corner, the hulking Ingolf growled in agreement. "That damn woman Lay, what the hell was she thinking? She has stained the honor of the 5 sacred stars." In response to both of them, the blonde Saint Nathaniel slowly took his seat and offered his judgment. "That is right. However, these experiments were conducted solely by Lay and initiated by her alone. The rest of us, the 5 sacred stars, had no knowledge of it whatsoever. Of course, a man like Nathaniel could never have been unaware. But he had already decided to pin the entire burden of guilt squarely on Lay's shoulders. As for the traitor Hideki, he immediately grasped Nathaniel's intent and could not help but admire it. That is Nathaniel for you, always rational to the core. In other words, they are just scapegoating Lay and cutting her loose. I can't say for sure about Claudia and Ingolf. But Nathaniel definitely knew about Lay's experiments. And yet, he abandoned her without a second thought. The more he thought about it, the more Hideki felt cold sweat trickle down his back at Nathaniel's decisiveness and ruthlessness. After a few seconds, he steadied himself, his anxious gaze falling on a sealed letter nearby. "No. What matters now is that I follow his instructions." At that moment, the hideous woman Claudia suddenly spoke up again. "I am rather curious about the attacker." To explain, Hideki stepped forward. "About that, a sealed letter was delivered to the academy by the one who attacked Lay." He held up the envelope for everyone to see, which immediately drew startled reactions. "A letter, from the attacker, Awako," read it aloud. They pressed him urgently. Hideki nodded and unfolded the letter. "Of course, I will read it now." The contents were chilling. "I have returned to the present world from within that gate. I will deal with all of you, so wait for me. Misato Kyoichiro." The moment they heard the name of the sender, the expressions of the other 3 shifted dramatically. Most of all Nathaniel's. Beads of sweat broke out across his face, and his trembling voice betrayed a flicker of hope. Could someone be impersonating Kyoichiro? After a brief pause, the blond man furrowed his brow and shook his head. No, he could not have known what lies beyond that gate unless he had been there himself. The sender must be Kyoichiro. Hearing this, the priestess ran a hand across her chin, deep in thought. Perhaps he used time magic. But before she could finish, Ingolf snarled in irritation, his tone thick with killing intent. "Why are we even worrying about this? If Kyoichiro really has returned, then all we need to do is crush him again." His booming words filled the chamber. And of course, Nathaniel readily agreed. Ingolf has a point. Think about it, there is no need for us to act rashly. On her side of the screen, Claudia still seemed uneasy, as if she wanted to say something, but Nathaniel cut her off before she could speak. "Why do not we just wait and see what Kyoichiro does?" And with that, the short meeting ended in abrupt haste. When the computer screen went dark, the hulking Ingolf moved toward the window, glaring outside as his voice thundered with rage. "Kyoichiro, you are the one man I will never forgive." Elsewhere, once the meeting had concluded, Headmaster Hideki Awako wasted no time reporting the outcome to the true mastermind. His voice came through the phone. "So, just as you instructed, I carried out your orders." Hearing this, Kaisuke calmly replied, "I understand." Then he leaned back with a satisfied grin. Mind racing over what steps to take next. So Nathaniel is not making a move right away. He is being cautious. Well, that is fine. Once they realize I have returned, they won't be able to sit still. First, I will deal with the ones whose whereabouts I already know. With that decision made, he cheerfully gave his hound a command. All right, Awako. Time to move. On the other end, Iwako's voice cracked with worry. What should we do next? Sensing his dog's panic, as though the man might wet himself, Kaisuke quickly reassured him. It won't be that hard. All you have to do is arrange for me to transfer to an academy connected to Ingolf. Realizing the implication, Hideki hesitated before asking. So, your next target is Ingolf? Kaisuke admitted it without hesitation. Exactly. A short-term study abroad program should make it easy, do not you think? Since he was now tied to Kaisuke's side whether he liked it or not, Hideki offered a word of warning. Let me make one thing clear. Ingolf is not like me or Lei. You won't find any dirt on him, no shady dealings, no scandalous rumors. His sharp-faced caution made Kaisuke fall silent for a beat. Then, with the same cold composure, Kaisuke replied, even so, I still need to look him in the eye at least once. I will leave the formalities to you. He ended the call there, turning his gaze toward the world beyond the window. His lips moved in a low murmur. Rumor or no rumor, it does not change the fact that he betrayed me 20 years ago. Time flew by quickly. Thanks to Iwako's arrangements, the protagonist soon secured a study abroad placement. Shifting to Kaisuke's perspective, he now found himself surrounded by a new landscape, eyes scanning every detail as he whispered to himself. So this is Germany, huh? They confirmed ties between this country's academy and Ingolf. I will use the German academy as a bridge to reach him. But first, I need to get to the school. Carrying that thought in mind, he pressed forward until his attention was suddenly caught by a loud, grating voice. Damn leeches, clinging to me again. Casting his gaze slightly to the side, Kaisuke spotted a Japanese girl being harassed by a couple of drunk men. He could not understand a word they were saying. The language here was completely different. So, I will just use the void to translate automatically, he thought. Without the slightest hesitation, he unleashed his magic, letting it ripple outward in all directions. Almost instantly, their voices became clear in his ears. The man in the brown shirt smirked as he spoke. Don't be like that, come on, sweetheart, what is the harm in hanging out with us for a while? The one in the black jacket chimed in eagerly. Yeah, spend some time with us, it won't be a waste of your time. Come with me, huh? The girl with black hair kept her scowl firm as she snapped back. You pests are exactly why I called you leeches. I am not going anywhere with a bunch of gutter trash like you. Her words lit a fire of anger in the thugs. What the hell did you just say? You are being a little brat, we will have to teach you a lesson. The one in black reached forward, clamping down hard on her shoulder. Her face darkened with fury. But just then, another voice cut in sharply. Hey, why do not you bastards back the hell off and leave her alone? The sudden interruption made all three of them turn. The man in brown barked, huh, and who the hell are you supposed to be? Kaisuke did not hold back. I said get the fuck out of here, you worthless trash. The raw insult pushed the thugs over the edge. Rage exploded in their eyes as they gathered power into their fists, golden flames roaring to life. You little shit, you think you can disrespect us? They shouted, hurling their blazing punches straight at him. Too bad for them, they had no idea who they were dealing with. With nothing more than a casual flick of his wrist, Kaisuke swatted them aside. Both men crashed to the ground, sprawled out like dead dogs. The black-haired girl froze in shock, eyes wide. He took them down with a single move. Just who is this student? Thankfully, Kaisuke had not hit too hard. The two thugs quickly came to, scrambled to their feet, and bolted in a panic. We are really sorry. They stammered before disappearing down the street. Watching their pitiful retreat, the black-haired girl turned back and offered Kaisuke a small word of gratitude. Yeah, thanks for helping me. Kaisuke shook his head lightly. It is nothing. His eyes swept over the area again, noting how the bystanders were whispering non-stop, some even pulling out their phones to snap pictures. The attention made him uncomfortable. So he said flatly, looks like we have drawn a crowd. Let us get out of here. Without another word, the two of them slipped away from the chaotic scene. Behind him, the girl's expression softened as a private thought stirred in her chest. The last time someone helped me like this, it was when I met him. Time passed quickly as they walked side by side, putting a good distance between themselves and the commotion. Once the chatter of strangers faded, the black-haired girl finally spoke again. Hey, I just want to thank you properly. If it were not for you, things could have gotten a lot worse. For Kaisuke, brushing off street thugs had been nothing more than an afterthought, so he did not give it much weight. Like I said, do not worry about it. Still, inwardly, he found himself noting her sense of responsibility. She probably just feels obliged to say that. But, I could swear I have seen her somewhere before. While Kaisuke was lost in quiet suspicion, the girl turned her eyes toward him and asked, "By the way, that uniform you are wearing. Are you a Japanese student?" The question caught him slightly off guard, but he nodded. "Yeah, I just arrived today through a short-term exchange program. I am on my way to the training academy now." He explained it calmly, unaware that the simple detail seemed to amuse her. The girl smiled, then offered warmly, "In that case, let me take you there as thanks." Having someone willing to lead the way, Kaisuke would have been a fool to refuse. He nodded back. "I would appreciate that." They continued walking together, their conversation flowing more naturally as the distance closed. At one point, Kaisuke asked, "So, are you traveling around the world or something?" The girl gave a small shrug and admitted, "Yeah. Something like that. I have got my own circumstances, you know." Her words were casual but vague, which only piqued Kaisuke's curiosity. "Is she around my age? It is rare to see a girl traveling all on her own." Unable to resist, he pressed, "Don't you ever run into danger traveling alone? Isn't it risky? Situations like what just happened must happen often, right?" The girl waved her hands quickly and laughed. "Ah, do not worry about me. I know a few spells, so I can take care of myself." Far from easing his mind, her carefree answer only deepened Kaisuke's concern. Inwardly, he thought grimly, didn't she just get grabbed a few minutes ago? Pushing that earlier subject aside, the short-haired girl rested her hand on her chin and asked, "So, you are really enrolling at the training academy, huh?" Kaisuke tilted his head slightly. "Is there a problem with that?" She glanced at him, her dark eyes calm but probing. "Not exactly. It is just the performance system. A lot of the students there think the same way. They have got this whole ranking structure in place, kind of like their own hierarchy. On top of that, they have got a point-based reward system tied directly to achievements." Kaisuke nodded lightly. "I see. But inside, the meaning hit him immediately. So they take meritocracy even more seriously than in Japan. According to Awakens, Ingolf regularly holds training sessions for the top-ranked students. Which means, if I want to get close to Ingolf, I will have to make my mark in that achievement-driven environment. Perfect. This is exactly the kind of challenge I enjoy." Just thinking about it brought a sharp glint of excitement to his face. The girl quickly pointed ahead, breaking his train of thought. "Look, we are here. That is the Lansing Training Academy." Before them stretched an enormous campus, its scale far larger than most schools Kaisuke had ever seen. Realizing he would reach his destination, he gave her a brief wave. "That is enough. Thanks for your help." She returned the gesture with a smile. "Don't mention it. Oh, I never told you my name, did I? I am Shirato Sayuki." She extended her hand. Kaisuke clasped it firmly, replying, "I will remember that. I am Asai Kaisuke." The moment his name left his lips, Sayuki's expression shifted dramatically, her eyes widening, her face trembling with a surge of emotion as though she could not believe what she had just heard. The reaction made Kaisuke narrow his eyes. "What is wrong?" But Sayuki quickly recovered, shaking her head. "No, it is nothing. Your name just reminded me of someone I used to know. Anyway, goodbye and good luck at the academy." With that, she turned and walked away briskly. Watching her retreating back, Kaisuke's brows furrowed. Shirato. There is something about her that lingers in my mind. But whatever. Time to move forward. With that, he stepped through the gates of the academy. He had not made it far before trouble sought him out. A cocky, arrogant voice rang out. "Hey, you there. You are the one, are not you?" The voice belonged to a red-haired student strutting forward with an air of superiority. Despite the arrogance dripping from the boy's tone, Kaisuke remained unshaken. His reply was cold, laced with disdain. "And who the hell are you supposed to be, punk?" The words made the redhead's face twist in fury. He shouted, "What did you just call me? You have got some nerve. It is not every day we get an exchange student from Japan, and I thought you were nothing special. But just so you do not get the wrong idea about this place, I will give you a proper welcome." Snarling, he leaned in close, pressing his face toward Kaisuke's as if to overwhelm him with sheer bravado. As for Kaisuke, a single glance was enough for him to understand exactly what the redhead was trying to do. That realization only made him sigh inwardly. Seriously, I have barely arrived and already some weirdo is picking a fight. Just like she said, he probably wants to test me with a duel. With that thought, Kaisuke casually tossed his bag to the side and said, "Fine, I will fight you." The red-haired boy seemed almost delighted by his response, quickly sealing the challenge. Good to see you know how to listen to reason. Then let us fight, he barked. At once, he activated his power, lifting shards of rock around him and sending them flying forward like a barrage of bullets. But such a display was not nearly enough to faze our protagonist. With a single, effortless sweep of his hand, Kyosuke shattered the entire attack, leaving the redhead staring in dumbstruck disbelief. He did not give him much time to be stunned before his cold voice cut through the air. Plenty of numbers, but far too weak. If you are going to use earth magic, at least do it like this. As his words echoed, a massive sphere of packed earth materialized in Kyosuke's hand. Without hesitation, he hurled it forward with crushing force. The redhead narrowly avoided being struck, but the earthen projectile slammed into the wall behind him, blasting a gaping hole straight through it. The sheer destruction it caused was enough to make the thug's entire body tremble. For the first time, it truly sank in he was not facing just another student. Standing before him was a monster in human form. What the hell? Who is this guy? The redhead thought in horror. Meanwhile, the scene shifted elsewhere to Awako. At that moment, she was walking while speaking coldly into her phone. Yes, that is correct. Saturday as usual. I have already made contact with Asai Kyosuke. I will remain in Germany and continue monitoring the target. In her other hand, she carried a file thick with documents detailed information on the very boy who had just revealed his terrifying strength. Returning to the protagonist, he had just received his student ID card from an academy staff member before quickly leaving the administration office. As he walked, Kyosuke glanced down at the card in his hand, mulling over his thoughts. All the paperwork's done. Finally, I can enter the local dungeon. This student ID is automatically translated for me, so it feels a little different from when I was still back in Japan. Following his gaze, the card displayed his basic information: Lancing Training Academy, Asai Kyosuke, Attribute, Void, Level 41, Points, 0. His eyes narrowed at the last line. Points, 0. So this must be the point system Shirato mentioned. Looks like it tracks dungeon exploration and performance. With that, Kyosuke casually slipped the card into his jacket pocket and reassured himself, doesn't matter. I have got no classes today, time to see what a German dungeon looks like. Unaware that behind him, the red-haired guy he had humiliated earlier was watching from the shadows, Kyosuke strode off. That redhead's expression was thoughtful, almost brooding, as if he were plotting something. Time moved quickly, shifting the scene to the front of an unidentified dungeon gate. Before stepping inside, Kyosuke reminded himself one more time. If I want to get close to Ingolf, I need to rank up to special class first. Guess I will start earning points in this high-level dungeon. Without hesitation, he stepped through the gate. Inside, a vast corridor stretched before him. From the distance, skeletal soldiers began to drift into view, shuffling toward him. The sight sparked a glint of interest in Kyosuke's dark eyes. Let us see what kind of monsters show up. Undead, and strong ones, too. Never fought this type in Japan, but I already know their weaknesses back when I was Misato Kyoichiro. Acting on instinct, Kyosuke channeled his magic, igniting his palm with a vivid golden flame. The skeleton soldiers, sensing the scent of the living, charged at him like rabid dogs. One of them gripped its axe tightly and swung with terrifying force. Kyosuke barely slipped to the side in time. Had he been a fraction slower, the axe would have cleaved him in half. He immediately prepared to counterattack. Undead collapse under strong force and fire. With that thought, he unleashed a blazing strike, driving his fist straight into the skeleton's torso. The impact shattered its spine, splitting its upper body clean off and sending it flying backward. Seeing their comrade obliterated in a single hit, the two remaining undead froze, stunned into inaction. Kyosuke smirked, stretched out his hand, and taunted, "Come on, who is next? Don't be shy, step right up." Time passed swiftly. Soon, shattered bones littered the floor in every direction. Kyosuke, hands shoved casually into his pockets, strolled forward without a care. This should be the last room. The boss is probably waiting. With that thought, he hurried his pace. Sure enough, the dungeon's boss revealed itself. At a glance, Kyosuke identified it a lich. The aura it radiated was so oppressive that even he had to silently acknowledge it. So this is the boss, that is one heavy presence. First things first, test it with fire. I will start with fire magic. He quickly hurled a fireball forward. But the lich reacted just as swiftly. With a single sweep of its staff, it released a surge of violet energy. The two attacks collided mid-air, exploding into sparks before vanishing into nothingness. Kyosuke was not all that surprised when he saw it happen. So it neutralized the fireball, makes sense. It is a boss, after all. Turning his eyes back to the enemy, he noticed the Lich had finally shifted to offense. Gathering a surge of dark energy into its staff, the creature unleashed a stream of viscous purple liquid that radiated menace. Kaisuke did not know exactly what the spell was. But instinct kicked in. He leapt backward in an instant to avoid it. Sure enough, the sight that followed froze his expression. The floor beneath where the liquid had landed was eaten away, leaving behind a gaping hole. A chill ran through him. That orb dissolves anything it touches. This is advanced tier magic. Still, I might be able to use it to my advantage. As the thought crossed his mind, a faint grin curved his lips. Whether the Lich sensed his confidence or took it as provocation, its next move came fast. It fired 3 more of the purple spheres in rapid succession. But Kaisuke already had a plan. I will channel sealing magic into my souls. Increase my propulsion. Power surged, and his speed spiked dramatically. His body blurred into a green streak of light, weaving past every attack until he was right in front of the Lich. Close enough to see the creature's surprise etched across its skeletal face. Kaisuke's voice cut sharp with mockery. Let us see how you handle your own attack. In his palm glimmered one of the Lich's very own purple orbs, stolen and turned back against it. Before the creature could even react, Kaisuke slammed the sphere into its face. Corrosive energy spread instantly, eating through bone with horrifying speed. Agonized screams echoed through the chamber, smoke rising in sickly green tendrils. Within moments, the Lich's body disintegrated, leaving nothing behind. Breathing steady, Kaisuke admitted the truth to himself. Effective, but it is high-tier magic. I can't reproduce it perfectly. I will need to level up my void magic. More importantly, I am not alone here. His eyes narrowed. He raised his voice, calm but commanding. I know you are there. Come out. Sure enough, not far from him stood a red-haired figure, silent until now. Once spotted, the man chuckled under his breath and stepped forward with a casual air. Haha, sharp of you. You caught on quicker than I expected. I have been watching you fight, hope you do not mind. Kaisuke's expression stayed cold. So, you here to challenge me again? Even as he spoke, his thoughts worked in the background. Seems he has not learned his lesson. But that aura, there is no doubt he is hiding something. On the opposite side, the red-haired young man began slowly closing the distance, his words carrying a cryptic edge. Well, I suppose it is about time we clear things up. Is not it? As he spoke, he pulled something from his pocket. The sudden movement immediately set Kaisuke on alert. His body dropped instinctively into a fighting stance. Every nerve firing as his mind raced. Damn it, he is really planning something. Could it be another body enhancement like Bruson's or some hidden weapon? But instead of the ambush Kaisuke expected, the redhead abruptly dropped to his knees, bowed his head to the floor, and pleaded, "Please, take me in as your disciple." Kaisuke froze, caught completely off guard. His mind spun in confusion. What the hell is he doing, and what is with that bowl? Before he could even ask, the redhead pushed the bowl forward and rushed to explain, almost as if reading Kaisuke's thoughts. This is like the Japanese dagiza, right? I also heard it is proper to offer sake to show respect. I could not help myself. I have been completely captivated by your strength. Please, teach me magic. The sight was so bizarre that Kaisuke actually took 2 steps back, goosebumps prickling his skin. You have got to be kidding me, he muttered. Yet the redhead persisted, eyes shining with desperation. That fight just now was amazing. I feel like such an idiot for ever picking a fight with you. From Kaisuke's perspective, all he could do was sigh at the absurdity of the situation. Great, things just got a whole lot more complicated. But just as that thought formed, his instincts flared something was wrong. Acting fast, Kaisuke turned and slapped a hand against the redhead's shoulder, as if bracing him. For a split second the redhead thought it meant acceptance, that Kaisuke was about to grant him the apprenticeship he begged for. Then the ground shook. A thunderous explosion ripped through the air, spraying shards of rock and dust in all directions. The source revealed itself an instant later. A massive skeletal dragon, its colossal hand slamming down onto the earth with bone-rattling force. The truth dawned immediately. Kaisuke's brows knitted tight as he muttered under his breath, so the Lich just now was not the final boss after all. Looks like the real one has finally shown itself. Beside him, the red-haired youth went pale as death, staring up at the monstrous form with trembling lips. Beside him, the red-haired kid stared up at the skeletal dragon and suddenly remembered something. If I am not mistaken, I saw this in a book once. It is a bone wyrm. That monster wiped out an entire village long ago. They say Ingolf barely managed to kill it. So how is it here? He babbled that out, dumbfounded. Kaisuke turned, cold and calm. I understand. The redhead nearly jumped at Kaisuke's tone. Wait, you do not mean you are actually going to fight that thing, do you? That is suicide, no matter how strong you are. Kaisuke cut him off. Relax. And from what you said, Ingolf did not actually kill it. A thought ran through his head. If the 5 sacred saints insist Misato Kyoichiro was the one who killed that beast, they would rewrite history to save face typical cowards. Fine, I will just kill it again. He clenched his jaw. Let us fight. The words left Kaisuke's mouth ice cold, and the bone Wyrm took the bait. Without hesitation it slammed its enormous bony hand into the ground, sending a shockwave rippling outward. The redhead screamed in terror as the blast threw his slight frame backward. Only Kaisuke stood firm. Still, Kaisuke's expression darkened. He thought, damn, it is stronger than it was 20 years ago. No matter. He channeled power into the soles of his feet and shot forward like a streak of lightning. Launching upward, he closed on the worm's skull. His fist wreathed in a blazing golden flame. Take this, he whispered, then slammed a crushing blow into the giant skull. The bone shattered into shards in an instant. The redhead went rigid with excitement. Oh my god, did you see that? My master just blew that monster away. Kaisuke hissed a reprimand without looking back. Cool it, you were the one saying fighting it was suicidal a second ago. I am not going to explain everything to you, this is not over. His words knocked the grin off the kid's face, and sure enough, the worm's skull knit itself back together as if nothing had happened. It is regenerating, the redhead yelled, stunned. Kaisuke explained tersely, boneworms have much higher vitality than ordinary undead. If you only wound them halfway, they just patch themselves up. The redhead blinked, baffled that Kaisuke knew this. Kaisuke did not answer, he was already planning his next move. It is tougher than I thought. Next step. Watching Kaisuke's pensive expression, the red-haired boy found himself lost in his own thoughts. Is he trying something different? But how could he possibly take on that monster head-on? Across the field, the bone Wyrm was growing impatient. It let out an ear-splitting roar, then spun around, swinging its massive tail straight at the two of them. Both boys panicked and ducked just in time to avoid being pulverized. But the worm's assault was not over. Its tail whipped back, this time aiming directly at the most dangerous target, Kaisuke. The beast's size made it powerful but sluggish, and that was its fatal flaw. With a deft sidestep, Kaisuke easily slipped past the blow. The redhead, however, grew more anxious by the second. From his perspective, Kaisuke was only defending himself. He could not see that Kaisuke was quietly waiting for the right moment to strike. Kaisuke's eyes locked on the monster, his mind sharpening. Not yet. Refine the image that is the essence of void magic. Born from imagination. The clearer the image, the greater the power. As he thought this, he began gathering strange mana into his palm. The bone Wyrm, oblivious, lunged forward again, maw opening wide as it unleashed a torrent of blistering heat. The redhead's heart nearly gave out watching Kaisuke take the blast head-on. He screamed, "Master," but a second later his eyes went wide with disbelief. As the light faded, the sight before him was nothing short of astonishing. Kaisuke stood firm, both hands clamped around the worm's razor-sharp jaws, holding them apart no matter how violently the beast thrashed. His grip tightened, and with it, he summoned his magic. A spiraling surge of water rose around the boneworm's colossal frame, wrapping it in a whirling torrent. Then, in an instant, the water froze solid, locking the beast's entire body in a prison of ice. The massive undead dragon was immobilized. The redhead could only gape, his jaw hanging open. Unbelievable, you are way too strong. Time passed quickly. Before long, the two of them had left the dungeon behind. Of course, the redhead still trailed after the protagonist, chattering non-stop. Master, wait up for me. Kaisuke sighed wearily at the nickname. Why do you have to say it in such a corny way? The redhead grinned sheepishly. Well, you know, it is a sign of respect. As he spoke, he noticed Kaisuke studying his student ID card with unusual focus. Curious, he asked, what has got you so interested in your ID? Kaisuke nodded. I was just calculating how many points a dungeon run earns me. You are Mateo, right? How exactly do those points affect class rankings? Mateo stroked his chin thoughtfully before answering. This is just a rough guide, but every 10,000 points bumps you up one class. So, to reach the special class, you would need around 30,000 points. The bad news is that dungeon points are fixed. That bone WYRM you just beat doesn't net you a single bonus point. Kaisuke did the math in his head. So I earned 500 points from this dungeon, meaning I would have to grind it 600 times just to qualify. Looks like getting into the special class is going to take some time. Mateo's eyes widened at the blunt declaration. Wait, so you really are aiming for the special class? Then, as if remembering something important, he brightened. Oh, there is actually a shortcut to rack up points faster. Before he could even finish, Kaisuke's face loomed dangerously close, his aura cold and sharp. Tell me, now. Whoa, too close, man, Mateo yelped, flinching. It is the Celestial Festival. It is happening in a month. It is a big event where students compete head-to-head in assigned challenges. The winner gets 20,000 points. At those words, Kaisuke's eyes sharpened like blades. Perfect. If I take first place, I will close the gap with Ingolf in no time. He clenched his fist, voice brimming with resolve. I will claim first place at the Celestial Festival. Time passed quickly, and soon the day of the Celestial Festival arrived. On this day, every student who intended to compete for extra points had already gathered at the venue. The announcer's voice boomed across the plaza, echoing from every direction. All right, let the Celestial Festival begin. In a quiet corner of the square, Kaisuke stood watching, determined to secure his place in the special class. There was no way he would miss this event. By his side was the ever-energetic Mateo, who grinned ear to ear. Finally, the festival's here, master. Kaisuke gave only a curt nod in response, cold and unreadable. But behind that calm exterior, his mind was sharp and calculating. If I rack up enough points and take first place here, I will be promoted to the special class. And once I am there, I will be one step closer to that bastard who betrayed me 20 years ago. He did not let his inner thoughts show. Meanwhile, from the high platform above, the voice of a professor rang out, steady and commanding. Your task is simple. Claim the jewel at the top of the highest tower. The method does not matter whether you fight your way through or climb straight up. The choice is yours. Show us the strength you have trained so hard to master. The firmness in the professor's tone sent a nervous shiver through Mateo, who wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. But Kaisuke only smiled faintly, a sharp glint in his eyes. Sounds exactly like the kind of challenge this academy would throw at us. Works perfectly for me. A moment later, Mateo seemed to shake off his nerves. He bounced on his toes, punching the air in warm-up, his voice full of forced bravado. Master, we are taking first place no matter what. Kaisuke sighed in mild exasperation. When I heard the festival only allowed teams of 2, I was not sure what to do. Guess I lucked out having someone already at my side. Before he could dwell on it further, a familiar voice called out brightly from ahead. Hey, Kaisuke. He turned in surprise. Shirato, you are here too. Shirato smiled warmly. Of course, I came to see you shine. Mateo, noticing the pretty girl, immediately perked up. Master, who is this beautiful lady? Is she your girlfriend? His reward was a sharp chop to the head from Kaisuke. Don't say something so stupid. Their exchange was cut short when a commotion suddenly rippled through the crowd. Students pointed and shouted to each other. Hey, look over there. A giant screen had lit up before them, and what appeared on it stunned everyone. The figure inside the display was none other than Ingolf the betrayer. Kaisuke's face hardened instantly, murderous intent radiating from his expression. It looked as though he might charge at the screen at any moment. Up on the viewing platform, a professor with black hair welcomed the guest with a polite smile. Lord Ingolf, it is an honor to have you here at our festival. Ingolf waved dismissively, answering with a faint shake of his head. Think nothing of it. I was simply curious about this event. I would like to see if any of these young magi might prove to be a golden egg. Back on the plaza floor, Kaisuke's face remained etched with fury, his killing intent nearly tangible. Watching him from the side, Shirato's eyes narrowed slightly, her mind stirring with unspoken thoughts. Not long after, an announcement rang out. Students, proceed inside the tower. At the command, the participants quickly moved, feet echoing as they rushed through the entrance. In no time, the interior unfolded before their eyes, a vast spiral structure with stairways winding upward toward the top. Seeing everyone dash forward, Mateo quickly called out, All right, let us go, master. Kaisuke gave a short nod in agreement. But things were never going to be that simple. Before they could even set foot on the stairs, a thunderous explosion erupted. Its source was revealed a heartbeat later, a massive wolf that blocked their path. Mateo's eyes went wide, his face drained of color as though he were staring death in the face. "You have got to be kidding me right from the start," he groaned. Kaisuke only shrugged, answering coolly, as expected. "They did say the creatures were ranked in advance." Hearing that, Mateo hurriedly asked, voice tinged with panic, "So, what do we do now, master?" But before he even finished the question, Kaisuke had already vanished from his side. Mateo frantically scanned around and caught sight of him sprinting straight at the beast. In the blink of an eye, Kaisuke's fist crashed square into the wolf's face, slamming the creature to the ground like a mangled mutt. With the guardian beast defeated, Kaisuke turned back calmly. "What are you waiting for? Move," Mateo stammered, flustered. "All right, I am coming." The two quickly ascended to the second floor. At the same time, outside the tower, every move of theirs was being broadcast to the audience. And sure enough, Ingolf's eyes were now fixed on Kaisuke. Narrowing them slightly, he muttered, "HMPH. A Japanese, is it?" Unlike his cool appraisal, the rest of the students erupted in admiration. "Holy crap, he dropped that thing with just one punch." Even Shirato broke into a cold sweat at the sheer force Kaisuke displayed, whispering to herself, "I knew he was not someone ordinary." Back inside, Mateo had just finished bringing down a monster of his own when Kaisuke asked, "You alright?" Mateo grinned and gave him a thumbs up. "I have got plenty left in the tank, master," relieved that his partner was still holding strong. Kaisuke pressed forward without hesitation. "Good, then stop wasting time, let us go." Mateo groaned but kept following. They climbed higher until Kaisuke suddenly sensed something. "Stop," he barked. An instant later, a massive explosion ripped across their path. But this time, it was not the work of a beast. The culprit stepped out of the smoke, a blonde student, magic still flickering from his hand as he blocked their way. His eerie laugh echoed against the stone walls. "Hey, you two are not getting past us." Mateo clenched his fists, furious. "You bastards, that is a dirty move," but the two students only jeered louder. "What is he saying? Too far. I can't hear him, whatever, see you later, losers. Just sit there and watch." With mocking laughter, they dashed ahead, leaving Mateo fuming. "Hey, get back here," he shouted, then turned desperately to Kaisuke. "Master, what do we do now?" Kaisuke replied with disarming simplicity. "What else, we just fly past them." Mateo blinked, not fully processing until Kaisuke grabbed him firmly by the shoulder. A moment later, they both soared forward, Kaisuke dragging him through the air with sheer force. Cutting back to the blonde student, he and his blue-haired companion had already reached a massive door looming ahead, its design unmistakably that of a boss chamber. The blonde smirked confidently. "Perfect, this is the final room. That was easier than I thought." The blue-haired one laughed along. "Exactly, as if we would ever lose to some Japanese kid." That was what they thought. But then, a familiar voice suddenly rang out from behind them. "How could you possibly believe that?" The sound sent both schemers into a panic. They spun around in shock and shouted, "What the hell? How did you get here?" Kaisuke answered with a face full of disdain. "I hate to break it to you, but that little obstacle you set up did not slow me down in the slightest." Behind him, Mateo was practically on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion, but he still forced himself to chime in, backing up his master as best he could. "That is right. We are not about to lose to a pair of clowns like you. You are finished." His voice trembled as he pointed forward, though his bravado barely masked his nerves. Sensing that Kaisuke was no ordinary opponent, the two students decided to strike first. "Don't you dare underestimate us, we will crush you," they bellowed, beginning to cast their spells. But to Kaisuke, their casting speed was unbearably slow. Before their magic could even take form, he closed the distance and delivered a sharp chop to each of their necks. Both students' eyes rolled back white, and they collapsed unconscious where they stood. Mateo froze for a moment in disbelief, then broke out in excited awe. "Whoa, I did not even see you move." With the minor scuffle behind them, the two pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the final chamber. At its center stood a crystal orb resting on a stone pedestal. Kaisuke immediately guessed that this was the gemstone they were meant to retrieve. Mateo's voice rose with eager triumph. "That is it, and we are the first ones here." But things were never that simple. Kaisuke quickly noticed something off. It is not over yet. Almost on cue, armored knights materialized around the crystal, as though summoned from nowhere. Both he and Mateo were left baffled by their sudden appearance. Even the professors watching from outside were stunned, exchanging uneasy remarks. "What the hell is this?" Those armored knights were not part of the program. The only one who seemed entertained was Ingolf. He leaned back with a satisfied smirk, for this was his doing. Inwardly, he mused, excellent. Let us see if they can survive this little twist.